Welcome to the regularly scheduled August 24th meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Commission. First calling the roll, Commissioner Andrews. Here. Commissioner Hand. Here. Commissioner Herr.
Here.
Commissioner Keene.
Here.
Right. All present and accounted for. Moving to second item on the agenda, public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public who want to speak? Please come forward.
Good afternoon, Chair Rennie and members of the Commission. My name is Kathleen Courtney. I reside at 1158 Green Street in San Francisco, and I have owned and resided at that location for the last 35 years. I have been out of the country for the last month, and therefore I was not, and returned home on Thursday, and therefore was not able to give my comments to Eileen Hansen, who submitted a complaint against the Alliance for Jobs in connection with the work they're doing against Aaron Peskin. I am calling to your attention something that occurred to me on June 28th that I think reflects the egregious nature of what's going on. I am a professional marketer, and as such, I listen to surveys. Anybody that surveys me, I listen because I want to know what's going on and how they do it. And if you look at a declaration that I prepared for you, on June 28th, after returning from the Pride March, I took a survey call at 2 p.m. The survey lasted at least 15 to 20 minutes. The questionnaire suggested and the way that they asked the questions suggested that they were fully informed about who they were calling. They asked if I was on a landline or a cell line. I said land. They asked my address. I declined to give it to them, although they gave me the number. And they asked if I was in District 3, and I said yes. I was asked a series of introductory questions, which you always listen to because you try to determine who's calling you. And the introductory questions are, what did I think about Uber, high-tech industries, Mayor Lee, Chris Daly, a former supervisor who's been out of office for several years, how important affordable housing, parking, bicycle, and pedestrian safety, rents, and development were for. Next, I was asked on a 5-point scale to give my opinion of Aaron Peskin, Julie Christensen, and Wilma Tang. I said I was not familiar at all with Wilma Tang, but I gave a response to that. Following the rating, using only the names of the District 3 candidates, I was read a brief description of Julie Christensen as, and by this time I was taking notes because this was a different type of survey than one that I usually get, as, quote, an appointed supervisor, 20-year neighborhood and community advocate who fought for libraries and Central Subway and Jody Park. And they asked me, this is what supporters say about her, and everything was generally fine. Next, the interviewer described Aaron Peskin as the president of a nonprofit who halted development on the waterfront, worked against several proposals, former supervisor, elected president of the board. Here's what supporters say about him and the positive comments. Just need 2 seconds.
Em, I think your time is up.
Okay. I call to your attention points 10, where they stated that Aaron Peskin was known for threatening phone calls, foul language, invective.
All right. Your time is up, ma'am.
You need to act on this complaint.
Thank you. Afternoon.
Good evening. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm reminded that the last time you had a mayor of any kind here in this room, it triggered a bomb threat. I'm hoping that my comments are not as explosive, but they are important. And I'm appearing here tonight to respectfully urge this commission to direct staff, as you heard with the previous testimony and the ones that you will hear, that you act with all deliberate speed on the complaint by citizen Eileen Hansen, who is on her way here from Yosemite, that the third-party spending on behalf of incumbent Supervisor Julie Christensen and against challenger Aaron Peskin in the District 3 supervisorial campaign has not been reported as required by law. The complaint that states up to $150,000 has been spent on behalf of Supervisor Christensen was filed on August 13th, and the failure of staff to act on this in a timely manner has had the effect of denying Mr. Peskin an opportunity to raise funds that will allow him to compete fairly with his opponent. It should not take that long to determine the facts. In addition, the complaint states that the San Francisco Alliance for Jobs, the third party that's involved in this independent expenditure and this election, has failed to file or disclose their spending. A newspaper article in the San Francisco Chronicle last month reported a poll that was conducted by the Alliance for Jobs that outlined the strategy of how to defeat Mr. Peskin and re-elect Supervisor Christensen. Best estimates for that poll, done by a national polling firm, Fairbanks, Mullen, Mueller, Matz and Associates, would have cost at least $25,000, and yet it fails to appear in any of the filings as an independent expenditure. Two other issues that are worthy of your attention. A reliable report indicates that, as Citizen Hansen has indicated, the complaint was brought to the immediate attention of the former executive director, who dismissed it out of hand, saying that there was no disclosure required. I am informed that this is completely contrary to the law as it existed at the time that the complaint was filed. Also, the potential conflict of interest, Mr. Chairman, of your current executive director. No personal affront intended, Mr. Minardi, but this includes lawyer James Sutton. Mr. Minardi was a member of that firm for 5 years and 9 months before he took this job as your acting executive director. He should be recused, as he was in the Mark Farrell case, because of his involvement with his prior firm. I ask for your immediate attention to this complaint.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I know it's unusual, but we have something being brought to us by a former mayor. And there's only one aspect of it that, if I could, I'd like to inquire about. That has to do with where it is now. Was the complaint dismissed out of hand by Mr. St. Croix? I mean, we've had problems in the past in regard to the matter of Mr. St. Croix overstepping his authorities, and so if this is what's been alleged now publicly by a former mayor of the city, and if that's the case, I think we should have some immediate response to that one allegation.
Commissioner, as you're familiar, all investigations conducted by the Ethics Commission concerning pending complaints are confidential.
We're not talking about an investigation. We're talking about something just being dismissed out of hand. We as a commission, over the course of the last few months, have had discussions relating to matters not getting to us because of former Director St. Croix's deciding that he was going to make arbitrary decisions relating to it. I think it's important relating to this allegation for us to know, was a complaint just dismissed out of hand? And that has nothing to do with the confidentiality of an investigation or anything like that. Was it just tossed out?
Again, Commissioner, we treat complaints received by the Ethics Commission alleging violations of local ethics laws and campaign finance laws as confidential. In addition to that, I would remind you that we're currently in public comment. If you want to have an extended discussion about any matter under the Commission's jurisdiction, it'll have to be noticed and agendized as such.
Commissioners, my name is Larry Bush, Commission Chair. I just want to say, first of all, that under the Commission's rules, anyone who files a complaint is to get an acknowledgement that the complaint has been received. It's my understanding that Ms. Hansen has not received any acknowledgement of the complaint that she filed on August 13th. That's a simple matter for the Commission to acknowledge, as they should, whether or not the complaint was received. That doesn't get into anything more complicated than that. Secondly, I am reliably informed by reporters who called about this issue and talked to Mr. St. Croix that he said there is no violation here and just sent it on its way. As you know, when you rewrote the campaign finance law earlier this year, you dropped the provision that said those people who spend $5,000 or more on a third-party disclosure no longer have to file the disclosure with the Ethics Commission. Instead, the Commission was to undertake its own review of the record and determine whether that amount of money was spent. But in the event that someone doesn't file a report, then you have no report to review. So you have this dark hole of a catch-22 that said, there's no report, so we didn't review any report. I think that that's obviously something that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Amy Fairweiss. I'm the founder and director of Neighbors Developing Divisadero, and I'm bringing to your attention one of the biggest, if not the biggest, ethics concern in the city in this moment. The public wants the Ethics Commission to address allegations of Mayor Ed Lee's campaign finance violations in retiring his nearly $300,000 in debt after the 2011 mayor's race. Since Mayor Lee is currently seeking re-election, we would like this matter to be addressed and information presented to the public before voters begin to receive their absentee ballots. The public recently learned on April 17, 2012, in a recorded conversation, Zula Jones, a human rights commissioner, staff member, told an undercover FBI agent posing as a businessman how to hide money that exceeded campaign limits by using straw donors. Ed knows that you gave $10,000. He knows that you will give another $10,000. He also knows that we had to break the $10,000 up, said Jones in a 2012 recording. Lee allegedly met the same undercover agent on April 6, 2012, at a Human Rights Commissioner's Nazli Mohajer's office. Mohajer introduced the agent to Lee as an individual who had raised $10,000 to assist in retiring the campaign debt. The Monday after the meeting, Mohajer reportedly met with the agent and discussed breaking up an additional $10,000 contribution. When the agent asked about dividing the funds into smaller increments, Mohajer said, "Yeah, we can do that. We have no problem with that. But the only thing is you can never talk about this to anyone you know." It's important to note that Mohajer had been brought up on charges of campaign finance issues with the Ethics Commission for hosting a campaign debt relief party for Lee in 2012 and was soon reappointed to the commission by Mayor Lee. And when we look back at the 2011 election and the campaign finances, we see that Ed Lee basically outspent John Avalos, who was his closest contender, by about 4-1, and he still went over his budget by nearly $300,000. And one of the main responsibilities of a mayor of the city and county of San Francisco is to stay within the budget. And so it's alarming to me that he did not stay within his means, because I was raised to stay within my means, live within my means. And so since he was already outspending 4-1, why go over budget an extra $300,000? And then that starts to make sense why he might be scrambling with his underlings afterwards to figure out, how are we going to pay off this debt in $500 increments? $300,000 to retire after he'd already won the election. People had already contributed millions of dollars in $500 increments, and then he had to figure out a way to retire it. So what are you going to do before the election to put our minds at ease about this matter? Please let us know.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to speak about the District 3 third-party spending complaint that is before this commission. My name is Veta Kapuri. My husband and I have lived in District 3 for 15 years. The D3 election that's coming up this November is by far one of the most heated in a rather dull campaign year, at least that's what the papers tell us. This campaign is of utmost importance. We are asking that you follow up, investigate, and enforce the complaint that's before you, because knowing what third-party spending is occurring is critical to voters like me. We have a very politically savvy city. We pay attention, we read, we look into these things, we investigate. So we are here before you to ask you, in your eminent wisdom, to investigate the issue of the San Francisco Alliance for Jobs and Sustainable Growth PAC, because the complaint alleges that there is third-party spending to influence the race on behalf of one supervisor and not the other. That is Supervisor Christensen. Specifically, there is a semi-annual campaign finance statement filed by the San Francisco Alliance on July 31 that they have paid $13,500 to Tremolta Advisors for campaign consulting services. However, according to the Ethics Commission website, Tremolta Advisors it's not only not registered to provide campaign consulting services to San Francisco Alliance, it's not currently a registered campaign consultant at all. The Tremolta Advisors are campaign consultants providing field organizers to make phone calls and knocks on behalf of one supervisor in the D3 race, Supervisor Christensen, and not the other. This is very troubling. We're asking you to act on this complaint. None of this information has been disclosed so far as part of the race. That's the issue. Transparency, disclosure. That's why we're asking for your help to make sure that that's what the D3 voters are getting in this very, very critical race. So please investigate and take enforcement action on this complaint that's before you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Bolt, and I'm a sole owner-operator of a dog walking business here in San Francisco, and I've resided in the city since I was 17 years old, and I'm now 30. So I'm a longtime San Francisco resident, and I wanted to echo Amy Farah-Weiss's concerns about Mayor Ed Lee's campaign finance allegations against him and the potential ethics breaches in that case, especially with the upcoming mayoral election. I think it's extremely important that those allegations actually be investigated instead of just let to fall on deaf ears. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Oliver Chalker. I have been living in San Francisco for the last couple of years. This is my first time where I will be voting in a local election, and I want to copy Amy Farah-Weiss's statements on the allegations regarding Ed Lee. As someone who is just stepping into San Francisco politics, I feel like that this has, in a lot of ways, tainted it, and I have a lot of questions, and I would very much like you to respond to all this. Thank you very much.
David Pilpel, speaking as an individual. I just wanted to express concerns with due respect to Commissioner Keene about remarks that were attributed to him in a Matirin Ross column in the Chronicle 2 or 3 weeks ago in connection with the allegations about Ed Lee falling from the Leland Yee matter. I was concerned that those remarks appeared to confirm the receipt of a complaint and or an investigation on that matter, and also suggested to me that Commissioner Keene had possibly already come to a conclusion that there was probable cause finding. That's how I read it. I'm sure others could read it differently. I just wanted to express that concern that I think, as Deputy City Attorney Shen advised you earlier, that complaints are confidential under the charter, and although commissioners can certainly speak to reporters and get quoted in the paper and talk about the general practice of how complaints are received and reviewed, that one probably should not comment on a specific complaint or suggest that anything about specific facts. So I'm not filing any complaint or expressing any concern beyond this, but I just wanted to state that. So I just had those concerns. Thank you very much.
Any other?
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Just in a minute. If you look at the Commission's bylaws, there is a paragraph that reads as follows: "The Commission shall urge the public in the strongest possible terms not to make complaints at public meetings, since the public disclosure of such complaints may undermine any subsequent investigation undertaken by the Commission." Now, as I think all of you know, if you have a complaint, it is to be filed with the staff and dealt with in a confidential manner. And I don't know, there have been some references to complaints that have been filed that have been dismissed. I don't know anything about it, but the proper procedure is not in an open forum to discuss it, because of the fact that if in fact there's an ongoing investigation, you could well prejudice by the remarks that are made when the time comes when enforcement actions are taken. But I appreciate the comments, and we will certainly follow up on some of the issues you've raised, but I don't think at the moment they were not on the agenda, and we aren't in a position to deal with them as agenda items. All right. Commissioner Keene.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regard to the statement by Mr. Pilpel relating to my comment to Emily Green of the San Francisco Chronicle and her having then put it in the story, what I said was a literal regurgitation of what Executive Director John St. Croix said in a letter that he wrote to a member of the public, that the member of the public then disseminated widely to other members of the public in an email. One of the people who it was disseminated to was Mr. Larry Bush, and I then got that email, along with many other members of the public, of what Mr. St. Croix had said about that particular complaint. Mr. St. Croix had spoken on behalf of the commission, made a comment relating to it, and I simply regurgitated what those comments were, literally. I sent an email to you, Mr. Chair, referencing Mr. St. Croix's letter and also Mr. Bush's email where he had set out what Mr. St. Croix had said. So it was not a personal comment of mine in any way relating to the complaint. It was simply a statement of what had been said by our executive director, presumably on behalf of the commission and everyone else, to the public, therefore revealing all of what was said in these comments. And I simply regurgitated that to Ms. Green when she asked the question about the particular issue involved. I did not reveal any confidential information. It was not confidential. Mr. St. Croix had already widely disseminated it to the public, and by his doing that, in terms of the remarks that we're talking about, it was not confidential, and therefore there was no impropriety on my behalf.
All right, we'll turn to item number 3 on the agenda, a discussion and possible action regarding commission activities relating to its expenditure lobbyist ballot measure. I don't think there will be any action that we're going to talk about, but I wanted to bring my fellow commissioners up to date on what has occurred in connection with the expenditure lobbyist ballot measure since our last meeting. And I think distributed to the public were the ballot statement which was prepared on behalf of the commission, the opposition that was prepared by a single individual who took issue with what he deemed to be exemptions, but not really the substance of the ballot measure. Our response to the argument against, and there have been since that time there was also a ballot simplification meeting with the ballot simplification commission, or committee, which did a great job of doing some, I think, clear laying out what the ballot measure seeks to accomplish. Mr. Minardi and I have attended a fairly large number of various club meetings, and for those of you who have not been in the political process, San Francisco has numerous political clubs that meet and they hold what are called endorsement sessions. and we receive invitations to those sessions, and we appear, and our role is very constrained because of the advice from the city attorney's office that we cannot advocate. We can talk only objectively and talk about the facts. And therefore, and the invitations will always say, we want a speaker on behalf of in favor of the proposal, and any speakers against it. And I always have to tell them when I stand up that we're here in a totally different role, and we're not here as advocating to vote for or against, but here's what it's all about. Generally, they're quite accepting of that limited role, and I've got to say that Friends of Ethics, particularly Mr. Bush, has been attending many of the meetings, and I think playing the role of an advocate for the ordinance and explaining some of the questions and answering some of the questions that they may have about some of the misstatements that are out there in the public. But one of the problems is many of these clubs limit it to one speaker, so that if Mr. Minardi and I have agreed to go, Mr. Bush or anybody who's an advocate for it isn't allowed to speak. And I will tell you that we have generally been fairly successful. The great overwhelming majority of the organizations have voted in favor of supporting what is Proposition C. And I believe that one that I appeared at last Saturday voted no. And I don't know what the reasons were. I was the only one who appeared on behalf of it. But there was real hostility in the club to the Ethics Commission and questions of why should we trust you? Because you don't do anything. So it was a little hard to stay factually objective in response to some of the questions. But in any case, we expect the invitations will continue through the month of September. And we will try to appear at as many as we can and urge those who are in favor of Proposition C or who are opposed to it to appear and express the views as advocates for whatever the point may be. Anybody have any questions or comments that you want?
I wanted to, Mr. Chair, I wanted to get some clarity on the back page, because I have a feeling that there will be over the coming months growing amounts of advocacy on both sides. And I'm looking on this back page, and it says, can this proposal be amended or changed at a later date? And does that mean a later date after the ordinance is passed? It has to pass. From this point on, it moves forward and has to pass. And then all that, these bullet points are then are in play. Okay, thank you.
If I could just say, Chair, thank you to you and Mr. Minardi for your efforts and for attending the meetings. I think it's good for the public to see the commission participating.
Yeah, I'd like to second that.
Well, it's typical is this Saturday. There's three of them, two between 11:30 and 12 something, and then another one that hasn't been the time, but it's somewhere around 1:30 or so. We did turn down one for Sunday because neither of us were available, but I'm happy to say that that club endorsed Proposition C without our appearance, but I think maybe Mr. Bush may have been there and helped. All right, public comment?
Just a few points, Mr. Chair. I know the club that voted no on Saturday, and Jesus could not have delivered that club. It was opposed deeply by some members of the committee who had been given, I think, misleading information. I wonder at this point whether or not you might want to do an update on the frequently asked questions page, because a number of issues have been coming up repeatedly at the endorsement meetings. For example, a question about what constitutes a member of an organization, because there's an exemption for contacting members when you're doing things. And the response on that is a little unclear in the law, and it'd be good to have some view of that. Also, I think it's been very helpful when I've talked to clubs to point out that the groups that have been most concerned about this, the nonprofit organizations and the unions, already register and lobby as direct lobbyists. And I've been handing out a list of those who do that and pointing out that those also exist in other cities. I want to bring to your attention a part of the lobby law that has been overlooked by many people but is relevant to this case. It's also relevant to Prop E, which is the measure about public notices. And that is a requirement that says that when you testify before a body on behalf of a client, you are to identify who your client is when you're testifying. Here's a copy of the law and a reference to the Prop E thing. I think it would be good if the Commission sent to all boards and commissions and to the Board of Supervisors a reminder that people who are speaking as paid advocates at public meetings need to identify who they are speaking for. Under Prop E, it would eliminate this part of the lobby law because it says all of the testimony should be confidential, in which no record is kept of the points of view or the people who speak. So there's perhaps a unintended consequence of invalidating some of the important public disclosures that we have in the lobby law. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Van Ravensway. I do think you need to update the FAQs a bit. What was handed out here today has 2 pages of FAQs. There's a 3-page document that ties off your agenda. I think the second page is missing from the handout. And there was a section in there that asks, did the city previously regulate expenditure lobbying? With some bullets underneath that. I think maybe that should be expanded a little bit to make it clear that nonprofits and unions were subject to the prior law up until 2009. And I think where you talk about the process under which it was adopted, you should mention that it was brought up at more than one meeting. You did discuss it in a couple of meetings. You had an interested persons meeting as well. And just kind of put that in the FAQ because, you know, some people are making allegations about a late night secret meeting where this was adopted, which, you know, doesn't fit with any reality I'm aware of. So thank you.
Any further comments? Turning to agenda item number 4, discussion and possible action regarding staff's proposal to issue warning letters instead of pursuing fines for certain violation of disclaimer requirements for campaign-related communications. Mr. Minardi, do you want to elaborate on that for us?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy Director Jesse Minardi. This is just a very sort of a simple request having to do with 2 sort of body areas of rules that the Commission is dealing with that are we're currently under a bit of a transition. The first has to do with the first sort of set of rules has to do with the disclaimer laws, which just changed The commission approved it back in January, and it was effective at the end of July. And the disclaimer laws are, I believe, improved. They ask for certain additional information, like somebody has to refer people to the website, the Ethics Commission website, on the paid for by line. So paid for by Committee X. Go to the Ethics Commission website for more information. So that has just changed, and based on sort of a lot of the calls coming in, people are, trying their best, it appears, to comply, but are definitely a little confused. I've been pretty happy with how we're advising them. But what we anticipate that there will likely be a few, mistakes, and disclaimers that are not complete based on, this transition period. So what the commission has is the commission adopted back 2 years ago another set of rules, which are policies which provide for fixed fines for certain violations of our campaign laws. And you all may remember this, but I would say 6 to 9 months ago, we had sort of this rash of disclaimer violation cases where there were disclaimers were in 13-point font instead of 14-point font, but by virtue of the policies, we had to kind of go forward and impose these fines. So those policies have to be updated because the disclaimer rules and other things changed some of the applicable code sections. But pending that update, we think it's reasonable for staff in certain instances to sort of exercise the discretion to present the commission with where there is a violation, with a proposed warning letter as opposed to necessarily a fine. Given the transition and given what we understand are a lot of questions on these matters. Now, again, all it would be a proposal. So the commission would, of course, retain the authority to say, no, we think that a fine should be imposed, that sort of thing. But, we're thinking of instances where, for example, it's a new campaign, there is no history of any sort of violations, there is no intent, and they, say, forgot to include the reference to the website. But all of the paid for by information was included, the address was included, and it was an oversight given that we're sort of have these new rules. So in an instance like that, we would say that it might be reasonable to say, hey, look, no history, no intent, most of the information is there, the important information is there. We're going to suggest that the commission close this with a warning letter. Don't do it again. If you do it again, we'll issue a fine, as opposed to going to this automatic procedure where you automatically have to pay. I mean, in the past, fines have been a minimum $500. The policy actually calls for $1,000 for those types of fines. There would certainly be cases where we would say we should still impose those fines automatically. I think, and staff would propose that, for instance, if there's a mass mailer, which has been subject to disclaimer laws forever, and there's absolutely no disclaimer on it, that is not a warning letter, because that is a very common thing that's been in the law for a long time. But things like the font size is a little off, maybe this reference to the website is not there, no history. We think allowing us to propose a warning letter settlement, we think is a wise thing. And again, this would be subject ultimately to your approval, so to the extent you thought the facts didn't merit it, you could reject it, and we would direct us to go back and seek a fine.
Any discussion?
I have a question. You say that you have to update the policies. The policies are not on the website or on other material?
They are
distribute?
They are on the website.
The updated policies?
Not the updated policies, but there is a big note up at there are a couple of things that have to be updated too. Our regulations and our policies, and there's a big note on it that says, that there have been changes to the campaign law, that these policies and regs have to be updated. With any questions, please contact staff immediately if you have any questions about how these apply.
And how long do you think it's going to take to update these policies on materials and on the website?
Well, it would take commission action, so the staff could not do that. So we would have to prepare the new policies, the new regulations. The policies probably wouldn't be a huge overhaul, but it would be certainly some work. The regulations will take a little bit longer. So certainly we would need a few months to do that.
Well, given that, I really support what you're saying, because from what I've seen, often it is newcomers to the electoral process and the political process who make the mistakes, don't really know what they're doing, and then suffer these fines, which often I think we've seen, they don't really have the money to pay for it. So I think a warning letter would certainly be appropriate in those cases. Obviously, with those people whom you know are fully conversant with all of the regs and with all of the policies, that's a different situation. But I support your proposal.
And by way of clarification, one thing is, although the regulations haven't been updated, we did prepare, staff prepared, and I'll mention this as part of the ED report, a lot of guidance that we disseminated through our interested persons list, including a number of charts that lay out exactly, where the disclaimers should be, hopefully, we hope, in an easy-to-use fashion. But again, these are confusing rules, so it's certainly people make mistakes.
Seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Yeah, I'd agree also. It's good guided discretion, because some of the fines, $500 for these rather de minimis font violations, and I'm comforted by the fact that the last line of the staff recommendations, which of course would follow through, that the Commission would retain the authority to reject a proposed warning letter in any enforcement matter and direct the staff to pursue the appropriate fine. So we're not giving up anything here. We're just widening the area of discretion, and it seems very reasonable.
So that as you contemplated, if we approve this, that in a case where you're going to send a warning letter rather than imposing a fine, that you will advise the Commission that that's how you intend to dispose of it before you send out the warning letter.
That's correct. Yeah, definitely.
Andrews?
Under how many warning letters do we send out in a year? What other violations do we allow this kind of warning letter enforcement?
I couldn't comment on the numbers, but it can be in any, warning letters, whether from our organization or the FPPC, generally are sent out where there is a violation, usually a technical violation, but the estimation of the staff, and then if approved by the Commission as well, is that the public harm was limited, and that there was maybe some limited amount of culpability. So that taking those factors into consideration, the idea is, people make mistakes. If it's not a big mistake, there's not a lot of public harm, we're telling you, don't do it again. And that's sort of it. So it could be on any of the matters that are within the jurisdiction. So I can't think of one right off the hand. But
that's fine. I was just, there was another approach, obviously, is we could contemplate the reduction of the fine and just say for that classification of violation, it's $50 and it's not $500.
That's true.
Still that is, put someone on notice, in fact, that they are culpable, responsible, and to right that wrong, they would have to put some skin in the game. Be complicit with a warning letter.
I think that's right. I think I wasn't here, but my understanding is that these policies were designed to sort of speed things along a little bit. I'm not sure they ultimately. I'm not sure that was necessarily the outcome, but certainly sort of a traffic ticket approach is something the FPPC does, and I think would probably be in this Commission's interest of looking into. It's certainly something I was thinking about, but that's another issue. So, but
do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve the proposal relating to the warning letters.
Second.
I will call for public comment.
Good afternoon, Robert Van Ravensway again. Attached to the staff memo are the policies that you adopted before. And when I read this section dealing with the written disclaimers, and I think this is a good idea, I can't really map it onto what's in the policy right now. There's sort of a sequence of events where there's an initial preliminary review, there's a 14-day deadline, where things might come to the commission after that. Would they then come to the commission with a recommendation for a warning letter? You know, I think you need some clarity about how it maps onto the policy, and then it's probably good to go. Thank you.
Mr. Minardi?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think most of the timelines have to do with notifying the committee as to, we think that you had a violation of your disclaimer rule, and then they have 14 days to get back, all during the so-called preliminary review phase of this complaint. The thing is that, with the disclaimer, there's, it's sort of there. So it's very unlikely they're going to, unless they can show you that the disclaimer somehow, the copy you have doesn't have the right font size, which is unusual. Usually, it just sort of is what it is. But even under this, that just says that if you don't respond in 14 days, we will open a complaint, a formal complaint process. And then it would just go through the same process that we would have with our normal complaints. So what we would do is, again, we would, to the extent we thought there were mitigating circumstances, it wasn't that big a deal, whatever it is, that would then be subject to you folks to approve at a regular scheduled meeting.
David Pilpel again, speaking as an individual. I support the staff proposal. I just wanted to clarify 2 points. When a proposed warning letter is brought to the commission, I just wanted to be sure one way or the other, is it for a vote to approve the warning letter, or would it go absent a vote to disapprove? So I'm just trying to figure out where the 3 votes would be. Maybe staff can clarify. And then my only other concern is just to make clear that this gets in the project calendar or work plan, so that at some point, along with the long list of other things that are going to happen, this gets cataloged as a thing to update. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously, and the staff recommendation will be adopted. Turning to item 5, discussion and possible action regarding the Commission's efforts to hire a new executive director. Again, I don't think we're asking for any action here, but again, I wanted to bring the commissioners up to date on the recruiting process to date. The recruiting firm has advised us and sent us resumes for 9 applicants. They tell us that there have been 14 as of yesterday. They are sending further letters out to some of their contacts to see whether it engenders additional applicants. But our intention is that will continue through September 11th, at which time the application process will be completed, and Commissioner Andrews and I will be meeting to review and discuss the applications that have come in, and to see whether or not we think that there are candidates who are appropriate for the position, and present them, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4, to the commission for its consideration and decision as to the hire. If we are not satisfied with the quality of the responses, we may ask the recruiting firm to open the recruiting for a longer period of time to see whether we can agenda stronger candidates. I would just say overall, looking at the 9 that I've looked at, I'm not overwhelmed and maybe a little disappointed at this stage, but the recruiting firm says that it's very common for the major amount of the applicants coming in toward the end of the period. So we will see.
Chair Rennie?
Yes.
Just a couple of questions. So my understanding is that you and Commissioner Andrews will look at them, will winnow it down. There's no magic number that you will, if there's just a clear delineation after 3, then you'll present us with 3. If there's a clear delineation after 7, you'll present 7. Right. And that any decision to reopen or continue the application process will be made by the commission. Is that right?
Well, I think to continue it, I think unless you tell me otherwise, I think that Commissioner Andrews and I, as the committee assigned for the recruiting process, would have the authority to tell the recruiter to send out notices that the recruiting deadline has been extended to another time period.
And that would be because you did not think there was even one candidate who would qualify?
Right. Or I don't know if I'd say one, but that there were not, I would hope that 2 or 3 at least that we would feel would qualify. Now, I've got to tell you that we're in the process of preparing what I'll call core questions, which will be the questions that will be asked of every candidate when we have personal interviews with them. Whether those interviews are face-to-face or whether we do them by Skype or some other teleconferencing. But that I think in fairness to the candidates, we're going to have a group of core questions that every candidate will get asked that we can sort of test them all against a standard, but then we will question beyond those that may be subjects that open up because of the responses to the core questions.
When will the questioning of potential candidates occur?
Well, assuming that we close it on September 11th, Commissioner Andrews and I will have to agree on some time when we can conduct these interviews. I would hope it would be sometime in the month of September.
So the idea being that you would conduct the interviews and then eventually, whether that's September or October, the commission would have candidates
Right.
on. Would we have a chance to meet the candidates in open session?
Not in open session.
Or in any session?
Closed session.
Closed session, sorry.
It'd have to be in closed session.
Sure, okay.
But it would be only the ones that we have winnowed down to that we would recommend be considered. In other words, we'll go through the 9 or 14 or 20 as it may be. I think some we'll be able to winnow out almost without face-to-face meetings. And I think hoping to have it done by the end of September is probably overly optimistic. So I think the target date should be our meeting in October.
That would be when the commission would have an opportunity to
Right.
meet the candidates.
Or we might schedule a special meeting for that purpose. But I'd like to get a final decision made by the end of October.
Okay. I think we do need a little clarity, though, on what the basis is going to be for continuing the process. In other words, I think, as you guys all know, I have some concern. I do think we want to be efficient and try to get a person in place as soon as reasonable. And if there are no good candidates, then I can understand the need to keep the process open. But I would like a little more clarity as to what that threshold is. In other words, I mean, if you look at all the candidates and you don't think there's even one that would merit being the executive director, then I can understand that. But where is the number at which you're going to say, all right, we need to keep this process open because there aren't enough good candidates?
Well, I don't think there's a magic. I mean, during this, as I've been through this process quite often on both sides, there's no magic number. But generally speaking, the minimum would be 2. The max would be the max. 3 is always great. But I would say to just bring one candidate forward is not worth it. And that would, for me, be the automatic trigger to extending the process and then looking at the strategies of outreach that we would be doing to be more targeted even in our strategies of outreach, and even looking at some of what we are offering in terms of salary and benefits. And I know there's not a lot of wiggle room around that, but I would be interested to see how much of that comes up as a consideration and how much of it was a part of the consideration of a lot of folks who've either ruled themselves in or ruled themselves out so far. But at minimum 2, and then 3, I personally would feel great if there were 3 or more. But certainly, I don't know how the commission feels about this, but not 1.
Would there be a downside if there are 2? And I agree with you. It sounds like the minimum should be 2. But if there are 2, is there a downside to bringing 2 to the commission? And if neither is deemed satisfactory, to then reopen, rather than sort of deciding, well, I want, you two deciding, well, I want 4, so.
Yeah, I don't think there's a downside because of our process. We have structure in place, right? We have an interim executive director. Different situations call for different strategies. In this particular one, we've kind of designed it so that we have time is on our side. It may not be completely optimal for staff and such as we move forward, but the fact is that we have built this temporary strategy and structure to be in place so that it can support us so that we have the time. So if it came that 2 candidates came forward and through the interviewing process we recognize that these aren't the right candidates, we would have the opportunity to do that. And the commission, as the staff, would continue to move forward. So I think the staffing and the structure is all in place for us to have any of those options in front of us, and we could exercise them at any time.
Thank you.
Any public comment?
Thank you, Larry Bush. Commissioners, just a few quick comments. At what point, if at all, are you going to be disclosing the names of the candidates, or is it all going to be confidential?
I believe that all of them will be confidential because all of them are holding their jobs, other jobs.
That would be what I would expect, but I just wanted to put that on the record.
They do not want the fact that they applied for another job and were unsuccessful being known. So I think the only public information will be the successful candidate.
Secondly, the core questions that you're talking about, will you circulate those among the other commissioners, or is it just going to be you and Commissioner Andrews?
I would anticipate they would be circulated to the other commissioners, and although I had given some thought to it, they may be circulated for public comment.
I always appreciate transparency, but I was thinking you might just solicit from the public what questions they think should be asked, and whether or not you decide to release the questions that are being asked is a personnel decision for the commission. I know that in terms of the number of people that go forward, when I worked in the federal government, you always had 3 candidates who went forward. And I sat in and was involved in hiring the heads of the offices throughout 4 states in different cities. And it's important to have a robust group of candidates to look at, because they bring different skills, and at different times it's not a cookie cutter thing. At different times, the commission will have one set of agenda, or some commissioners will have one, and others will have another. So it's good to have some variation. The only other point I wanted to make is to bring to your attention a factor in the new executive director that hasn't been true in the recent, and that is that under the city charter, the Ethics Commission is required to have an executive secretary, and that's found in Section 4102, Section number 9 says the department, quote, shall appoint an executive secretary to manage the affairs and operations of the board or commissions. And that's true for every commission. There is no exception for the Ethics Commission. I know you have resisted having an executive secretary for the commission, but I think as you look forward to a new position, you need to keep in mind that that's a factor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I want to thank you for the hard work you've been doing on the campaign trail. I know it's exhaustive and exhausting. I do want to also, I know this process of the appointment of the executive director is not something where we really have to reinvent the wheel. There's plenty of technical assistance available to you, and I assume your staff, I think for the public that's watching this broadcast, they would be interested in knowing how your subcommittee works a little bit, whether you have a staff or assistants or perhaps interface with the Civil Service Commission, I would assume, or some of the technical people there, so that you can get all the help you need, and that this is not coming off of the brow of Zeus.
The Human Resources provides whatever support we need whenever we ask for it, and they've been very cooperative.
Great.
And the recruiting firm is
the firm itself.
Right.
So you have both the city and the outside consultant helping.
Correct.
Very good.
David Pilpel again, speaking as an individual. Just two comments here. Wanted to appreciate the continued discussion in public and transparency about the hiring process. In particular, Chair Rennie, your note that there were 9 candidates so far. I think, if I understood that correctly, I think to the extent that you can continue to provide numerical information as the process goes on, so perhaps the total number of candidates that you received, how many were screened by the subcommittee, how many were presented to the commission, and then ultimately who was selected. I think that's very helpful so that we get a sense of what happened. I'm not interested in knowing the names until you actually select the director, so I think that all works. And just to comment on Mr. Bush's comment, I believe the charter provision about a commission secretary is subject to the budget and fiscal provisions elsewhere in the charter, and the budget for the commission currently does not have a position allocated for a commission secretary. In the event that you had one, then the commission would hire and oversee that person as well, but currently you don't. That's my understanding. Thank you.
All right, unless any of the commissioners have a question, we'll turn to item number 6, discussion and possible action regarding complaints. And a list of complaints are contained in that agenda item, and we will first, I guess does anybody have a motion as to whether or not we should go into closed session to discuss those items in the agenda, item 6? Motion to have us consider those in closed session?
Can someone remind me of the legal basis for going into closed session for something like this?
Sure, Commissioner Herr. It's actually spelled out on the second page of the agenda itself under sub B, very top of the page.
So this is an action where we are determining whether, regarding possible actions regarding complaints received or initiated by the Ethics Commission, and the basis is the attorney-client privilege. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. As you're familiar, this is the citation we use for all closed session discussion of enforcement matters, and during these enforcement matters, members of my office are routinely present. I myself am not present since I advise the staff. We maintain a due process wall. Usually, Deputy City Attorney Josh Wright would advise the Commission on such matters, but he's unavailable tonight, and actually John Givner here is covering for Josh.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
Maybe I can ask a clarifying question. So, city attorney is the attorney, obviously. Who is the client?
I'm sorry?
Who is the client?
Our client is the City and County of San Francisco, including one of its constituent agencies, the San Francisco Ethics Commission.
Okay, so the commission in this particular instance, the commission is the client, city attorney is the attorney.
Correct.
And to the extent we are seeking legal advice
in connection with pending enforcement
in connection
matters.
with the pending enforcement matter. Okay, and isn't there a local regulation that we rely upon for keeping these enforcement matters in closed session?
Yeah, the charter section as well is one thing that we do rely on. Charter section C.3699-13.
Right, that's what's cited here. And that, remind me again, that charter section requires...
Yeah, I can even pull up the language pretty quickly. It's sub A of that section. It provides the investigation shall be conducted in a confidential manner. Records of any investigation shall be considered confidential information to the extent permitted by state law. The unauthorized release of confidential information shall be sufficient grounds for the termination of any employee or the removal of commissioner responsible for such release. And this is from our charter.
I will move that we meet in closed session.
Could I just ask a question before we take up the motion? I'm not going to in regard to the charter section, Mr. Chen, that you just talked about, relating to the need to keep confidential the investigation of any kind of complaints. As I understand it, and looking at the materials themselves are to trigger tonight a probable cause hearing. Is that fair? I mean, if we go forward, we would be going forward with what would be, in effect, a probable cause hearing, like a preliminary hearing in a criminal case before a case then is held to trial. Isn't that?
Right. I don't want to go into too much detail.
I'm not going into detail.
But I would just say...
I'm talking about procedure, Mr. Chen. You're always telling me I'm saying too much. I'm talking about procedure. I'm not talking about the investigation or anything like that. But the procedure that you lay out in Agenda Item 6, and I'm not opposing the closed session. I want to ask a question of you as our attorney as to whether or not, first of all, do you agree that if we go forward on Agenda Item 6, we'd be going forward with what would be some sort of probable cause hearing?
As the agenda describes it, there are 3 enforcement matters that the Commission is going to be considering tonight. Some of them, I believe, involve probable cause reports, and some do not.
Okay. So, in regard to, I'm trying to analogize this to probable cause hearings in other types of situations, like in the criminal system. You have the investigation is being done here by the staff in the criminal system, will be done by the police or the U.S. Attorney's Office or whatever. And then the material is assembled, and all of that may be confidential if it's a grand jury, or here, if just in terms of anything that's an investigation, it's all confidential. Then you get to a particular point where we're actually going to have a hearing to determine probable cause. And if we again analogize that to probable cause hearings in the criminal system, at that point, it's an open hearing, right? If you have a preliminary...
I will certainly defer to you on that.
Okay,
you have much more experience in criminal law than I do.
If you have a preliminary hearing then in a criminal case, it's an open hearing. And whatever may be confidential up till then, criminal grand jury matters and everything, they start coming out. Why would a probable cause hearing, and I'm not arguing that it isn't, but why is a probable cause hearing in our proceedings something that must be confidential?
I think that was a policy decision made by the voters and whoever drafted the charter amendment establishing these processes.
Even though the language talks about an investigation, it doesn't talk about any kind of hearings that we conduct. The language you just gave us talked about confidential investigations. Now we're in regard to a hearing. Why would a hearing have to be confidential?
Right. So that's. Do you want me to jump in?
Sure. Well, Jesse Minardi, Deputy Director. So, the most direct answer to that is that the regulations provide for it to be confidential. So does the.
Tell me the language.
The hearing shall be closed to the public to the extent permitted by state law, unless the respondent requests that the probable cause hearing be held in public.
Okay, that's all I was looking for.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted, Mr. Shan. Thanks very much.
Simply a policy decision made long ago.
Okay, that you could have taken care of it with that one sentence language that Mr. Minardi just furnished us.
We have a second to...
I second the motion.
Public comment?
Larry Bush, without disclosing any of the specifics, is it, in the Commission's view, possible to disclose whether any of these cases involve candidates or committees that are involved in the November 2015 election? Or is this going to be one of those things where we look back and say, well, they acted today, but it was on things that took place in 2011 or 2012? It would be good to disclose now whether what you're taking up involves candidates or committees that will be on the ballot in November. Is there any reason why that can't be included?
I would advise the Commission not to disclose that information. As the Commission is well aware, there's a limited number of offices up for election 2015 and a very limited number of offices which are up for competitive election.
You know, it's not a limited number of offices. I'm sorry, your boss is one of the people who's up for election in November, as is the sheriff, as is the district attorney, as is the mayor, as is one supervisor, as are a number of people on the board, on school board and community college board. There are probably 15 people on the ballot. So I really don't think that you can make that statement and be accurate.
Any other comment?
Yes. Taking Mr. Shin's opinion about what constitutes a disclosure, I'd like to know why the city attorney and the commission did not sanction Mr. St. Croix for sending out a letter in April describing the status of an investigation. That letter went out and said that the case had been referred over to the city attorney and the district attorney and was sent out publicly. Under your advice just now, Mr. Shin, that should be a violation of the city law. I heard no action by you or by this commission taking Mr. St. Croix to account for that.
The city attorney can correct me. My understanding is that that the staff is obligated to advise a complainant what action, if any, it has taken in connection with the complaint that's been filed.
That is correct.
I understand that the letter that is being referred to is a letter in which Mr. St. Croix told the complainant what had been done with his complaint.
I understand, but in that case, why didn't Eileen Hansen get a letter when she filed a complaint on August 13th? It's now been 2 weeks, and she's not even had an acknowledgement that the commission has accepted it.
I can't respond to that because I don't know anything about it. But
I understand. I'm not putting you on I'm not putting you in the witness box, but I am saying there's obviously a question here that this has been pending at staff for 2 weeks. It doesn't take 2 weeks to send a letter saying we've accepted your complaint or we reviewed your complaint. There's nothing, not even an acknowledgement that said we received it. Is it lost in the mail? Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Charlie Marsteller for the record. I thank you for all being here tonight, and this is an excellent opportunity and discussion to raise a little bit of prehistoric history. I've been attending meetings of the Commission very robustly early on, starting in about 97. That would include probably many hundreds of meetings of all types. But I do want to say that in the early days when this commission was born, you had hardly any staff, and you were just feeling your way, and the city attorney was taking very conservative views, which is understandable given your resourcing and other things, because you were just babes in arms. And they ruled very conservatively on your processes and procedures, particularly the ones pertaining to enforcement and adjudication of enforcements or complaints to the commission. So there may be now an excellent opportunity with 3 attorneys on the panel and perhaps more, and then some excellent staff who are also attorneys, to look at some of these issues that you've seen come up, particularly Mr. Herr, since he's been here very long and has gray hair now. Maybe not.
A few.
But there's a lot of expertise in the room, so you might want to revisit some of your processes as you have really interpreted them the most conservative ways. And in some ways, throughout your history, this has come into conflict with the public's need and rights to know, and I think at some point, some of your processes on adjudication need to be loosened up a little bit. But you started off very conservatively. That was back when I think Deputy City Attorney Julie Maw was here. And that was you're just feeling your way.
Thank you.
David Pilpel, again, speaking as an individual. At first, I thought that this discussion was sort of superfluous, but not at all. I think this has been very enlightening about the basis for the closed session. I'm remembering that the regulations provide for a certain amount, part of the process to be in closed session, and then once there's a finding of probable cause for the hearing on the merits to be public. And I think that those regulations were drafted by Deputy City Attorney Julie Maw or Deputy City Attorney Claire Sylvia, I forget who was involved. I mean, this goes way back, and there were some serious policy considerations about that, and I'm not sure that I agreed with all of them, and maybe it is time to revisit that. I think on balance, though, I am satisfied that under both the Brown Act and the Sunshine Ordinance that you're in a good place to go into closed session, and I want to think more in the future about how the charter provision about confidentiality affects these particular proceedings. But I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We will go into closed session.
Mr. Chair, if I could just say one thing, is that for the first matter, I've been firewalled off, so I'm going to leave for the first matter, and I'll come back for the last one.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
birth of the first publicly owned transit system in a major American city, the San Francisco Municipal Railway, MUNI, as it would come to be known. Happy birthday, MUNI. Here's to the next 100 years.
As a society, we've basically failed big portions of our population. If you think about the basics of food, shelter, safety, a lot of people don't have any of those. I'm just a cook. I can't really speak to any of the other things, but what I can say is that I might have some ideas about how we can address the food issue.
Open the door and walk through it. Don't just stay inside looking out.
If they grew up in a household that had access to good food and their parents cooked, this is what they would have taught them. This is how you feed yourself. But that's not happening in our country. It's a huge failure, and so that's one of the things that we're trying to address. My name is Daniel Patterson, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Cooking Project. So about 4 years ago, we started working with Larkin Street Youth Services. As we got to know the kids, one of the things that we figured out was that they didn't know how to cook.
My name is Cliff, and I heard about the cooking school through the Larkin Academy.
They're going out on their own, and they have no way to feed themselves healthy food, so they were eating a lot of fast food and they had a lot of bad diet habits.
I just usually eat whatever for lunch and dinner. Noodles, Safeway is like near my home, so a lot of hot food meals. I was really excited that I was eating vegetables today for lunch instead of what I normally eat.
So I started inviting them over, 10, 15 kids at a time, to teach them very, very basic ways that they could feed themselves good food. They were so excited. Partly it was learning the skills, and partly it was the taste of the food. They were really into it, and so it turned into this charity foundation. I ran into Sasha, who was teaching a class with some kids at the farmer's market, and we got to talking about similar interests, and I said, well, you want to run this charity foundation? She said, sure, and that was how it started.
My name is Sasha Bernstein, and I'm the co-founder and executive director for the Cooking Project. Our best classes for participation for a first-time student are Mondays. They're really fun. They're our chef-driven classes. We always have a different guest chef from different restaurants and organizations from around the city. They are kind of our standalone classes, so there's no prior experience required. We also do a series style of classes, which right now we're doing on Wednesdays. And then our final style right now are teen night dinners.
Sasha comes in and she can help teach us techniques and cooking techniques, things that can be used that we don't waste food. I feel like it's one of those elements that it can really have us all together and we can all cook and socialize. I've been going to the Cooking Project for about a year.
We want to be able to serve as many youth as we possibly can. The San Francisco Cooking School has been just an amazing, amazing partner. It's doing it in that space really just elevates the whole experience. For the kids, it feels so special. For the chefs, it makes it so easy for us to ask them to come because it's gorgeous there. It really makes the whole experience pretty special.
Hi, my name is Suzette Gresham. I'm the chef owner of Vaccarello in 1760 here in San Francisco. That's what these classes, I think, afford me, is the opportunity to break down those barriers and say, this is not scary, this is really friendly, this is your choice, this is all about you. And many times that's a real feel-good for the kids, like it's all about them. What it is that you give them is an opportunity, but you have to make it seem as if it's there for them for the taking. You have to show them that it's there and that they can do it.
Hi, my name is Anthony Strong. I'm the chef for Delfina Restaurant Group in San Francisco. The majority of kids at that age, in order to get them into food, they need to see something simple and delicious and easy to produce. Everything I teach, I like to make sure that people could do them with a bowl, a spoon, an oven, a burner, one pan.
I always like the recipes that they're really simple, but they're sophisticated enough that it would make me want to make them and not feel like it's like a burden to make food. Chefs that come in there, they teach us techniques that would make something simple into sophisticated.
I always go for versatility.
because I never want anyone to feel like they can't do it or it's too esoteric or just way out of their range.
Last time we went, they only use like 6 ingredients, and I could afford 6 ingredients.
What good is giving them recipes that they're not going to make? What good is showing them something they'll never use? And it's always wonderful to have something lovely to taste and eat, but if they have this feeling as they walk away that, what is that going to do for me, then your class was not successful.
This is my first class. Today we made like a vegetable stir fry over rice, which was salad, carrots, ginger, onions. It's like really affordable. It's like $1.50 per person. It was very easy to make the food that we prepared today. I loved it. If I had access to a kitchen, I would cook more.
Clients of Larkin Street, some of the youth have never had their own kitchen. Some of them weren't taught how to cook. I wasn't taught how to cook.
I really have a great appreciation for programs that teach kids food and cooking. It is one of the healthiest, most positive things that you can communicate to people at a very young age. The more programs like the Cooking Project in general that can have a positive impact on how our kids eat is really, really important.
I believe everybody should have the opportunity to utilize the kitchen to meet other folks, their age, to identify they're not alone and there are ways in which to pick yourself up and move forward. It's really important to me that the opportunity exists, and so I do everything in my power to keep it going.
We will have our new headquarters right here in the heart of the Tenderloin on Taylor and Turk at the end of this summer, 2015. We're really excited.
A lot of the conditions that we have in San Francisco, they have in the rest of the country. So our goal is to expand out of San Francisco. We already have our next location in Los Angeles and in Watts. And then after that, who knows?
We would never even want to tell people what to do or what to eat. We just want to provide the skills and the tools in case that's something that people are interested in doing.
You can't just go buy a box of success and put it on the table and have them take a bite. You have to put them in the right vein, in the right direction, with the right other group of kids, at the right school, at the right time, in the right place. And these are kids that haven't had that. So how do you provide for that? You have to instill in them that they can do it, that they are good enough right now to figure this out and find that future for themselves.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today at Presidio to celebrate this wonderful occasion. My name is Thomas Eckno, principal here at Presidio Middle School. And I want to warmly welcome all of you to our school. We're thrilled to be hosting our distinguished guest from Salesforce, the Mayor's Office, and San Francisco Unified to announce the third year of a partnership between Salesforce and the San Francisco Unified School District to transform STEM education and students and teachers. I especially want to welcome and acknowledge our Board of Education members, President Emily Morase, Shaman Walton, Jill Wins, Hydra Mendoza McDonald, and Sandra Fewer. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Supervisor Eric Marr for coming out today as well. And I especially want to welcome and acknowledge, that's enough about me, but I want to hand it off to our real honorary guests today, our own Kiara Neely and David Rauschwerger, who are going to lead us in a few Presidio cheers. You guys?
Yeah. Good afternoon, sixth graders. You are probably very excited to be here today. But before we start, we're going to do a little cheer. As you can see, the yard is separated into two sections, the right and the left. Kiara is going to take the right section, and I'm going to take the left. and we're going to do a call and response. And Kiara's going to tell you a little about how that goes.
Okay, you can scream, you can shout, you can clap, you just have to be loud. We're going to start with my side. When I say Presidio, you say Panthers. Presidio. 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 I was good.
That was great. Good job, guys. Our side, let's be a little bit louder, all right? So when I say Presidio, you say Panthers. Presidio! Presidio! Louder! Presidio! We do have one more thing.
We are going to do the regular Presidio cheer. We will... Never mind.
We're going to bring the whole 6th grade together, and we're going to do one group cheer. So we're going to start that right now. So, one more thing. When we point to you at the end, you all are going to scream roar as loud as you can. You guys ready? Ready? P, P-R, P-R-E-S, P-R-E-S-I-D-I-O, P-R-E-S-I-D-I-O, Presidio, Presidio.
Roar! Yeah. You guys are awesome. Perfect. Good job, brother.
Okay. Thank you, Kara and David. It is now my privilege to introduce the mayor of our wonderful city, Mayor Ed Lee. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Principal. Thank you to Kara and David. Wonderful student leaders, aren't they? Your leaders. Well, it's my pleasure to join the school board, Superintendent Carranza, our supervisor here today, to thank all of you for being not only great students, but being in one of the greatest schools in San Francisco, Presidio. Yeah. Well, as your mayor, one of the things I got to do was sit down a few years ago and talk to my good friend Mark and Lynn Benioff, who are great leaders in their own right in the business community, and we talked about what we all were truly motivated by, what our passions were for being what we're doing and who we are and where we came from. And I expressed to Mark one evening that I really wanted to do something for education because I was lucky to have a great education. My parents didn't have a lot of money, but I got lucky and got a lot of friends and went to some great institutions, and I wanted to return that and kind of on a personal level make sure that I did my part in helping our public schools be the best that they can be. So I focused on all of our public education institutions in San Francisco and said that if we're a world-class city with world-class companies like Salesforce, we should also have a world-class public education for everybody to enjoy and to be a part of. And so we looked at the stats. We said we were challenged in our middle schools and that we wanted to make sure that our middle schools were the best that they could be. So we wanted to focus on not only helping them become better, but making sure that the principals and the teachers also felt that the city would support them. And so we went on a quest, and I asked if the Salesforce Foundation, through Mark's leadership, could help us, and by golly, they started and they did. And not only has the Benioffs been a great leadership in their corporate giving, but there's also been helpful with the challenge that we have for homeless families, for veterans, and certainly for our health care in their support for our UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital. So today, we are continuing in our third year of an unprecedented investment in our public schools and continuing to focus on our middle grades. But not only is our middle grades being the focus, but we have done so well in providing a STEM foundation, a science, technology, engineering, and math foundation in this third year that with the help of the school district and Superintendent Carranza, we decided that this was the time when not only the middle schools would benefit, but the entire public education, and particularly reaching into the high schools. As you are preparing yourselves for high school, we wanted to also make sure that our resources, combined with the Salesforce Foundation's gifts, but also the incredible amount. You see all these people with these nice T-shirts? They're our incredible volunteer workforce from Salesforce. Thank you for being there. Because not only are the resources provided to the principals and teachers, but the volunteerism that is expressed through Salesforce Foundation and Salesforce Company's own motto of 111 and giving back to our communities and our school districts and all the other wonderful things that happen. But we want that volunteerism to be expressed not only in this school, but every school. And so they've infected, in a very positive way, the entire technology companies that Ron Conway and others at SF City have also come in on encircling the schools to make sure that all of our public schools get the benefit of the technology companies. So over 2,500 technology companies have now stepped forward because of the Salesforce leadership. They have also stepped forward to circle all of our schools and make sure that volunteerism, resources, and support for our public schools become part of their motto as well. But it began somewhere in the conversation, and both Ron and Mark were there, began with my commitment to make sure this city has the best public school system it can be. And yes, the articles are right. It wasn't with strings. It was, except for one. There was a string actually attached, I have to say. And that string was really to be the best that you can be. It's a string that I think everybody appreciates. I think all the kids here, when your parents talk to you and want you to be the best, and they do everything for you to support your education, we wanted to do the same thing with all of our public schools and with our school board. No strings except for one. Be the best that you can be. Hold each other accountable, principals and teachers, teachers with the parents, parents with the kids. You find that string. And the other string that I have is for myself. As the mayor here, that I have a string to make sure we can be the best city that we can be, embracing all of our schools, making sure all the companies act like Salesforce has been and its foundation, to make sure that they unveil their support for education, but also all the other things that they've been doing as well to exemplify good leadership in the business community, working with government, working with our school district and our school board to be the best we can be. And the return on that is going to be incredible, because I can already see in this third year commitment that the students are excited to be here with the principal, with the support, and the support of our volunteers. It takes place in this education, but I want all of you to know there's the greatest jobs in the world waiting for you as you graduate, or even when you're in high school. We've already started a cadet program with our police department once you come out. If you want to be a police officer, if you want to be an engineer, you want to be a teacher, you want to be a scientist, you want to be a lab technician, or work in the greatest hospitals in the world as a doctor, or the greatest technology companies in the world that are here, or a great part of our tourism. You can manage the best hotels and the best restaurants, or you can be a mayor. Absolutely. Or be a supervisor, or be one of anything that you want. It's wide open for you because you've got a great foundation in education. You can really, truly invest in yourselves to have the greatest goals you can be. This is what has always been our passion. I want to personally thank Mark and Lynn Benioff, because it takes leadership to actually produce all these resources and support. We have constantly engaged with each other about our dreams for this wonderful city and making sure we properly invest in our youth. That's why we take the time to go out and see a movie with kids, Martin Luther King Day, and have a chat with them about what they want to see as part of the vision that they have for a great city. But we also engage in parents. We engage with our communities. We engage with our education professionals. And I want to say thank you to Presidio Middle School, all the students here, all the volunteers here, to be a great school. I want to say again thank you to Mark, because Salesforce, I understand, as part of the Circle of Schools program, has specifically adopted the Presidio Middle School. Kind of like having a great uncle for Presidio Middle School. How they adopted you. How do you like that? These are wonderful times for our city. We have great challenges in front of us, but we have a very secure foundation by which to solve many of our problems. And I'm so lucky to be your mayor, and I'm going to be working really hard, because around the corner, we got to build more housing for our teachers, right? Make sure that it's not just what happens in the classroom. It's what happens every single day, whether it's on our streets, in the city. I got to build 30,000 more units, and making sure that a great part of those, over 50%, are affordable to working class families, and making sure we also take care of those that are low income as well, as those can afford the market rate housing that we're building. This is a challenge of our times, and we're up to it, but we also got great problem solvers right here on the school grounds. Thank you very much, and congratulations. May I introduce to you the CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff.
All right. Well, Mayor, thank you. That was such a nice introduction, and I'll tell you what a great lunch we had now. It was only about 4 years ago, you guys. The mayor invited me to Ella's down on California. How many of you have been to Ella's? Raise your hand. They have good pancakes there. Okay. He had the pancakes. I had the French toast. And what the mayor said was, the most important thing we have in San Francisco, which is the greatest city in the world, and just look at how beautiful it is here. It's nirvana. The most important thing we have in San Francisco is our kids, because our kids are our future. Do you guys agree with that? Yeah. Kids are the future. And when I went to high school, guess what? We were in Burlingame. We were the Panthers, too. So there is a karmic connection here with the Panthers. Isn't that cool? And and I have a cheer, too. We have all these Salesforce employees behind us. Raise your hand, Salesforce employees. And there are volunteers. And we have a cheer, too. And it goes like this. When I say sales, you say force. Sales! Force! Sales! Force! Sales! Force! Yeah, that's pretty good, huh? Yeah. So, we're excited to make a big financial contribution here to the school district. That's really exciting to us. It's great to write a check, but we're not just here to write a check and to bring you just money, because money alone doesn't do anything for schools. I'll tell you what helps schools. What helps schools is all of us embracing the school, embracing our great principal, embracing our great school board, embracing our great superintendent, our mayor, and you, all of our kids, all of us together, coming together, and that's why everyone at Salesforce is so excited to be here. Of course, we also like technology. Do you guys like iPads? Oh, okay, good. Have you guys seen more iPads around your school lately? No. Oh, no, that's so sad. That's because we got you books. Are you excited about having books? Well, guess what? I don't know what the superintendent did with all the iPads. We're going to have to go check his closet to see what's going on, okay? But we're bringing all these great computers, we're bringing all these great volunteers, and we're bringing a lot of money to make Presidio School a better school. Isn't that exciting? Yeah. And we all want Presidio School to be the best school possible, don't we? And we can do it together, can't we? Yeah. So that's why we're here, and we're excited to be with you. We're excited to focus on Presidio School as well as all the schools in San Francisco. And I just want to thank the mayor. I want to thank the superintendent. I want to thank the school board. I want to also thank Suzanne DiBianco, who runs our foundation. Stand up, Suzanne. And we also have some of the board members here from our foundation. Stand up, board members, and take your bow. So it's going to take everyone in this whole assembly to make this the best school in San Francisco, but we can do it. Are you guys ready to have the best school in San Francisco? All right. So this is my assignment for you. What I want you to do is sit down with your teachers, okay? And I want you to make a list of what is it going to take to make Presidio Middle School the best school in San Francisco. Now, here's the thing. Does everybody have an idea? Raise your hand if you have an idea ready. What? That's all the ideas we have? We're going to need a lot more ideas than that. Raise your hand if you have an idea on how to make the Presidio Middle School the best school in San Francisco. All right, that's better. Now let's try it again. Raise your hand if you have a great idea to make the Presidio Hill School the best school in San Francisco. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. And you're going to go back to your classrooms, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to write your ideas down, okay, and you're going to prioritize them. Does everybody know what prioritization means? Prioritization means what is the most important thing. Because if everything is important, then nothing is important. So we have to choose what we're going to do first. And you guys are going to give us the list, and all those guys behind you with those blue and white shirts, do you see them? Look around. They're going to get it done. It's really awesome to have them because they're going to work hard, and you give us the list, we're going to get it done. How does that sound? So you have to come up with some good ideas. All right, thank you, Mayor, and let's hear from our great superintendent here. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Benioff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How about Presidio Panthers? How are you? This is awesome. So you've thanked everyone that I wanted to thank, and I also want to especially thank our Board of Education for being here, and thank you for your guidance and your leadership here in San Francisco. With leaders like Mayor Lee and Mr. Benioff and Mrs. Benioff, quite frankly, this city is changing the face of public education and the changing education for the entire nation. And I'll tell you why. Because if you listen carefully to what the mayor said and what Mr. Benioff said, they're investing in our schools with the only return expected being a great education for our citizens, for our students in San Francisco. So when they say there's no strings attached, there aren't any strings attached. It's not like we're going to give you a donation and you have to do X, Y, and Z. What we've always talked about, and what I appreciate, Mr. Benioff and Mr. Mayor, it's always been about what will it take to make sure that our students in San Francisco have the best, richest, most awesome education possible. And that's what your investment is helping us to do. You know, the Board of Education a year ago adopted a very visionary vision for our city and for our school system, and we call it Vision 2025. And by the year 2025, we've identified what we want in a profile for a graduate of every one of our students, of every one of our schools. And I will tell you, Mr. Benioff, I'll tell you, Mr. Conway, I'll tell you, anyone that's out there, you will want to hire our students based on the profile and how they're going to leave our schools. They're going to be creative thinkers. They're going to be innovators. They're going to be able to converse in multiple languages, including computer coding. They're going to be able to be team players. They're going to be able to be deep thinkers and be able to work on teams. I can't think of anyone that wouldn't want to hire one of those students. So what your investment is helping us to do is to put into effect, put into motion Vision 2025. And it doesn't happen with just our incredible teachers at Presidio and elsewhere around the district. It doesn't happen with incredible leaders like Principal Ekno. It doesn't just happen because the superintendent and the Board of Education say it needs to happen. It happens when our philanthropic business icons like yourself, Mr. Benioff, roll up their sleeves and say, how can I help the schools? How can I come in and ask the educators, what can we do? How can we make our schools even better? That's the true, authentic partnership that we have in our schools and why we're so excited about it. You know, Mr. Mayor mentioned something that 4 years ago there was a conversation and we looked at the data, and I remember that conversation, subsequent conversations, and we said, well, middle schools are where we probably should pay attention because there seems to be a lack of engagement, there seems to be a little dip in student performance, parents aren't engaged. All the indicators said middle schools are where we should look at. So Mr. Benioff, Mr. Mayor, let me tell you what's happened in those years. As we speak, the middle schools and the middle grades in San Francisco are bursting at the seams. We are at 100% enrollment, and there are waiting lists for our middle schools because the word is out that the magic is happening in the middle grades in San Francisco. The word is out. When Mr. Benioff asked, have you seen a lot of iPads? And a lot of students said, well, no. I'm actually pretty happy about that because the investment hasn't been about devices. The investment has been investing not only in devices, but also investing in our wonderful teachers. So when we have an opportunity to take you in the classroom, you're going to see teachers teaching in a very different way and students demonstrating their learning in a very, very different way, which has been possible by this investment that you've made, not only in technology, but also in the professional development for our incredible educators to take it up even a higher notch. We also are very proud of the fact, sirs, that we are the first school district in the nation to have adopted a pre-K through 12 computer science curriculum. The first in the nation. Now, those conversations started as well when we started talking about what's it going to take to make this middle grades in San Francisco the number one across the nation. So in many regards, we're now leading the nation from a place where we said, let's pay attention to a particular grade span. We are now knocking it out of the park. As a student told me last week when I was at an event, Mr. Superintendent, we're crushing it. We're crushing it in the middle grades, and that couldn't have happened without the incredible work that you've done. I also want to take a moment, please, just to say a special thank you to our folks with SF City. Mr. Conway is here, and I know that Alex Turk, you're also here. I want to thank you because what folks don't understand is that Circle the Schools is a twist on the old Adopt the School, but it's taken it up a notch. So our organizations and our businesses and our tech companies are circling schools by circling to support our schools. And they're having the same conversations that Mr. Benioff just very briefly had with our students about what do you want? What does it take for you and your school to take it to the next level? Our tech community is having those conversations with our schools across the city. And I'm happy to report that every single middle school and K-8 and every single high school is fully circled. And a good percentage of our elementaries are now fully circled. So I think that deserves a round of applause too. So I want to say thank you for doing that. And this is the promise that we make to our students, that if you study hard, if you become engaged and really understand what you're trying to learn and what you're learning for, there are jobs in San Francisco, not only in the tech community, but in the educational community. We want you to graduate from San Francisco's public schools. We want you to live and work in San Francisco so that we continue to be the most diverse workforce in the nation and also the most innovative workforce in the nation. That's the message that we want all of you, Presidio Panthers, to take with you today, that you have a future here in San Francisco. So with that, I want to thank Salesforce. I want to thank the mayor for your incredible support of our schools. And I want to thank you for also saying what we've said from the beginning. You cannot have a world-class city without a world-class public education system. And if you look at the numbers at our middle schools and in our elementary schools and in our high schools, the word is out. People are coming to public schools first, and they're coming to public schools again and again. And it's because of this investment and this support of our community that's making that happen. So we want to thank you for your investment and your 10-year investment, I understand. It's not just a drop in the bucket, but I understand maybe longer. Why not? Let's do that. But that's the kind of commitment that we're talking about. It's not a flyby. It's not a drive-by. It's a very much an investment, and we're very proud to link arms with you and continue to make that investment something we're all proud of as we march towards Vision 2025. So with that, thank you, and I'm very, very excited about this next phase of our partnership. And Presidio Panthers, how about one large cheer for our benefactor, Mr. Benioff, and our mayor? How about a big Panther cheer? Yay! Thank you. So I'm going to turn this over to Principal Ekno, who will take this home and finish off the program.
Thank you all. So students, before we go back, Salesforce is launching a book for every student, and they're going to start with you. And so teachers, as we go back to class, we're going to start with the front, and our Salesforce volunteers are going to be handing every student a book today to take home tonight to start reading. So thank you, Salesforce, very much for that. So thank you. So let's go ahead. Mr.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your patience, first of all. I know everyone's been waiting very patiently. I'm Laura Garcia Cannon. I'm the morning anchor with NBC Bay Area News. I come on pretty early in the morning, 4:30 to 7 in the morning, before the Today Show, which means I get up at about 2 a.m., so I bet I beat most of you up this morning, right? Well, we're here to celebrate some really great things going on with Comcast this morning. And we're also joined by some very special guests I want to make sure to take note of. California Regional Vice President Hank Four is here, as well as Supervisor Scott Wiener from San Francisco. Ann Hitton, Executive Director for San Francisco City County Department of Aging and Adult Services, as well as Aaron Lowe, Program Manager of SF Connected. Cami Griffiths, Executive Director, Community Technology Network. Marie Jobling, Executive Director, Community Living Campaign. And Jared Jenkins, Board Member with Mission Brit. Well, yes, a big round of applause for everyone taking their special time for our special celebration today. Today we are really kicking off the fifth year of Internet Essentials in California. And Internet Essentials is really the most comprehensive, low-cost broadband adoption and access program that is happening in the entire country. As a journalist reporting from this community in the San Francisco Bay Area for now 15 and a half years of getting up early in the middle of the night, I've really seen that evolution in the role of technology, especially the internet, of how it comes to play in our day-to-day lives as well. I remember when people used to get their news from watching the news or newspapers, but now you can get it at a whim through the internet. But I also know that even in the Bay Area, although we're the technology epicenter of the entire world, we still have many around us that are not connected to the internet. And imagine not being connected. It's hard to imagine for a lot of people. I am also the mother of triplets. 3 little babies. Yeah, that's something I celebrate every single day. That's lucky, right? I consider myself very lucky. But I bring that up only because they're 6 years old now and talk about the internet and these little kids of what they do on it with their homework every day and with their teachers. It's how I connect to their teachers, to their school, to their medical offices as well. And it just shows the need and the evolution of what they're growing up with naturally. And my son can probably already teach me a few things about Google and whatnot. Yet, it's hard to believe there are so many that are not connected for many reasons, maybe because it's the cost of service or the cost of device to actually, get on the internet, or even a lack of training. So they do have some adult literacy training programs as well. But I really want to highlight one individual that has made such an important mission of really his being to ensure that Comcast does its part to help empower low-income youth and families that are not connected, hard to believe, to the power of the internet. So it is my pleasure to introduce Executive Vice President of Comcast Corporation, David L. Cohen. Always good to see you. Always good to see you.
So, thanks very much, Laura, for the record. I was up at roughly the same time you were, and I watched you this morning because I always check out our NBC affiliates whenever I travel. But thank you for joining us here this morning, and it's great to be back in San Francisco to talk about Internet Essentials. Over the past 4 years, I've been here many times to talk about this program. I think this is my third time with you, Laura, so I appreciate your continued dedication to this program. So I'm delighted today to give you a little bit of a status update and then to talk about a few exciting announcements. So like the San Francisco Giants winning the World Series title, by the way, I should be an honorary San Francisco citizen since I am a lifelong San Francisco Giants fan, which I inherited from my father, who continues to be a San Francisco Giants fan. But you should all be very proud to know that for the first time in the history of the program, the state of California has edged out Florida to be the #1 state in the country for Internet Essentials signups. So more than 70,000 families or more than 280,000 low-income Californians are now connected to the Internet at home as a result of Internet Essentials. And in the greater Bay Area alone, we have more than 23,000 families or more than 90,000 low-income residents of this region who have been connected to the Internet through this program. So congratulations to all of you who have helped make this happen. And if I can, I'm not going to introduce everyone who's been introduced again, but a special thanks to Hank Four and his whole team, because it's Hank and that team that drive this program from the perspective of Comcast. And Hank, very appreciative for your leadership, not only of this program, but of the business in California. And it's always a pleasure to come out and see you here today. So thank you, Hank and the team. So nationally, in just 4 years, we have now connected more than 500,000 families, more than 2 million low-income Americans to the Internet, many of them for the first time in their lives. To put some perspective around that, 2 million people is larger than the population of 96 of the 100 largest cities in America. And in fact, it's double the size of the entire population of San Jose. It's also larger than the entire population of 14 different states in America. So we are clearly beginning to make an impact in closing the digital divide. So I talked about 3 announcements that I had today, and I want to just reference them. So first of all, we have again doubled the speed of our Internet Essentials service up to 10 meg down. So we started this program at 1.5 meg down. We increased it to 3, then to 5, and now to 10. And we're doing that at no additional charge to both existing and new customers of Internet Essentials. Second, we also have announced that effective immediately, we are now providing a free Wi-Fi router to all Internet Essentials customers. So you will now have the ability to access your Internet service at home through Wi-Fi. For existing customers, all you have to do is call our toll-free number and we'll send you a router. For new customers, you'll have the option to get that router when you get your modem. And like the modem, no charge for the router, no monthly charge, no initial charge, no contract, no service charge if you need help hooking it up. There are few things in life when you say they're free, they really are free. So this really is free Wi-Fi as a part of your service. So third, and this is a little complicated, let me take a minute. I mean, one of our goals has been to make it really easy for people to sign up for this service. And most families who have children eligible for the National School Lunch Program know that, which is why we chose that eligibility. But we have to verify that eligibility. And that is a bit of a cumbersome process because of government regulations and privacy requirements, et cetera. So a while ago, we instituted a rule that we said if your child goes to a school where at least 80% of the students are eligible to participate in the National School Lunch Program, we'll deem every student in that school eligible. So even the 20% who are not eligible, we make them eligible for our program. Last year, we reduced that number to 70%, so that if you're in a school where at least 70% of the kids are eligible to participate in the National School Lunch Program, then you're eligible for Internet Essentials, even if you're not eligible to participate in the National School Lunch Program. This year, we have lowered that number to 50%. And what that means is that there are 20,000 schools in the Comcast footprint in this country where every student in that school is eligible to participate in this program, regardless of whether they themselves are eligible to participate in the National School Lunch Program. And instead of going through a clumsy third-party verification process, all you have to do is prove that you're in one of those schools. Give us a copy of a report card, a class schedule, a letter from the principal inviting you to back to school night. We'll take virtually anything you can think of that says that you go to that school, and we'll count that as a qualification for eligibility under the program. So this is all part of our commitment to maintain the momentum and to make sure that we can continue to sign people up for this program. And we're obviously very proud of this program. I'm proud personally. I think everyone in this company is proud of this. But this would not have happened without the support of literally thousands of nonprofit, governmental, library, faith-based community partners who have joined arm in arm with us to make this program such a success. And one of our commitments to our partners has been that we want their input into this program. What's working, what's not working, how do we make it better, how do we make it easier? And once this program started getting traction, the number one thing we heard from our nonprofit partners was, would you be willing to consider expanding the eligibility of the program beyond families with school-age children? And for those of you, by the way, I should thank all of the consumers of this center for joining us here today. But for those of you who wonder why we're standing in a senior center to talk about a program that is connecting children and low-income families with school-age children to the internet, your patience is about to be rewarded. Because the number one population that's been identified is whether we would consider expanding the eligibility of this program to low-income seniors in our footprint. So this is a complicated population, and what we have decided to do, is to launch a handful of pilot programs around the country where we will extend Internet Essentials to a low-income senior population. And the city of San Francisco is one of those pilots. And that is what we are announcing today. Over the last decade, senior citizens, in particular low-income senior citizens, have adopted broadband at a particularly low rate. According to Pew Research, only 25% of seniors with an income below $30,000 have broadband access at home, while 82% of seniors with incomes above $75,000, which are not wealthy, but at least are higher income, have access to the internet at home. So that's about a 60 percentage point digital divide, and that's what we're trying to attack by extending eligibility for this program to low-income senior citizens. I'll remind everyone, and as much as I try and say this all around the country, I think there's still not a complete understanding of the fact that the number one barrier to broadband adoption is not the cost of the internet service. It's not even the cost of the equipment or the lack of the equipment. Those are factors. But the number one barrier to broadband adoption is a bucket of digital literacy and digital relevance issues. People without the internet don't understand how important it is. They don't understand the relevance of it. They're afraid of it. They don't know how to use a computer. And those issues are particularly acute among senior citizens. So other Pew research concluded that only 18% of seniors surveyed would feel comfortable learning to use the internet and a new digital device on their own, while 77% said that they would need someone's help to be able to access the internet. So what we know from our 4 years of experience is that just having a press conference and issuing a press release, making low-cost, high-speed data service available, is not going to meaningfully close the digital divide among this senior population. We need to create a real digital literacy and digital awareness training program, which we're going to do in conjunction with a new web of nonprofit partners and governmental partners. So our model, quite frankly, is right here in San Francisco, where we've partnered with Self-Help for the Elderly to offer multi-generational computer training classes for seniors and youth who work together in our Comcast Digital's Connectors program. And in Palm Beach, Florida, which is, by the way, the other pilot program that we have announced, there are a lot of seniors in Palm Beach, I learned. Somewhat surprisingly to me, there are a lot of low-income seniors in Palm Beach County. So we had a program there with a local Urban League affiliate, and I recently had the opportunity to meet with the president of that local Urban League and with a number of seniors who participated in a digital literacy training program that we put together with that local Urban League. The president told me that teaching seniors to use the internet is like teaching them a new language. And in talking to those seniors, I learned something in a very powerful way, which is that through providing digital literacy training and computer access and computers to these seniors, we have literally opened a new window in their world. We have enabled them to connect to their friends, to their service providers, to their family in a way that they never imagined would be possible. And it's different than children who, quite frankly, know the internet better than their parents do and understand the power of the internet. This low-income senior population is a population that we are literally opening a new vista in their world. And the number one issue in elder care today is isolation of seniors. And our ability to use the internet to reduce that isolation and maintain connectivity is going to do more, in my view, to impact the quality of life for low-income senior citizens than anything else that we could devise as a solution to the problems of senior isolation. So, because I do work for a video company, we've produced a short video starring some of our local partners in Palm Beach County, which I'd like to show you today to get a first-hand sense from these seniors about the power of the internet for a low-income senior population.
Keyboard shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts. For seniors to have access to the internet is essential because without that, they are left behind. And in this community here in Florida, we have a lot of people that are from Haiti, Jamaica. Well, with the access to voice over IP, it costs them nothing. You have to have internet in order to take advantage of that situation.
I use the internet for communicating with friends and family. And I have a friend in Jamaica who I communicate with. I think it's good for people to learn about the internet because most communication is done by internet now. I remember when I used to write letters or send cards. We don't do that anymore.
Okay, so when it comes to seniors and the internet, they're all afraid. They think it's a gigantic monster of some sort. Well, it's really not.
I'm learning to go on the internet. I was totally ignorant of the whole computer thing. And as I say, terrified of it. I'm learning to loosen up a bit and lose the fear that I've had. So I'll get around to using it. I'll use it for just about everything.
You know, if I had the internet, I could do lots of things that would help me and keep me within my home instead of going out to do this. I can even pay my bills. So lots of things I can do if I had the internet. It's more than I ever thought that it could mean to anybody because it means so much to me.
Internet essentials can change everyone's life, not just seniors, not just high school, not just kids. It can change everyone's life. And Comcast is able to bring that internet into their home at a minimal cost. And really when we're talking about the internet, it's about improving their life.
So I will tell you, talking to this group of seniors who literally 6 months before I met them had never touched a computer, let alone turned one on, and hearing what they were doing with the computer already and with internet service in their homes was as impactful a personal experience as any of the multiple incredible experiences I've had talking to parents and their children about access to the internet. And one of the greatest moments was one of the instructors and I were talking to a number of the women, and I asked the instructor, so how these women doing? And he turned, he looked at me and he says, Mr. Cohen, he goes, they're doing great. In fact, I'm thinking about asking them if they would be interested in becoming trainers for my next class of seniors. And the look, the smile on these women's faces, the happiness and the realization that they actually had progressed far enough that they'd be able to help teach their friends and their colleagues in the computer how to use the internet was absolutely priceless. And that's part of you talk about an unintended consequence of digital literacy training is this sense of worth that these women could help to bring the same opening of the world to their friends and others in the community that had been brought to them was really amazing to see. So we are incredibly excited to work with our friends and partners in San Francisco on this pilot. I want to thank all the elected officials who joined us today, our nonprofit partners. Especially want to thank the mayor, Katie, and please appreciate your being here in an acting mayor capacity. But Mayor and I have known each other for a long time, and one of the reasons we chose San Francisco is because of the mayor's commitment to closing the digital divide, and one of the few mayors in the country with a particular focus on low-income seniors in connection with the digital divide. So working with the mayor, with the supervisors, with the Department of Aging, with all the robust nonprofit partners who focus on the senior community in San Francisco, I have no doubt that that San Francisco will be the ultimate pilot project for us. It will show how we can make this work, how we can make it be better, and how we can then help to roll it out to the rest of the country over time. So thank you all. Thanks for joining us. And I will look forward, as I keep threatening, I will look forward to coming back and reporting on the success of this program. The Bay Area has been just a spectacular place for us to roll out this program, and we look forward to many more years of success. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cohen. And I think we've heard it before. What happens in San Francisco, so goes the rest of the country. So today we're also joined by a leader of our beautiful city of San Francisco. David mentioned her as well. She works daily on a number of issues to improve the quality of life for all the great residents here. Please join me in welcoming Acting Mayor and SF Board of Supervisor of District 4, Katie Tang. Hi, Katie. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. And of course, I want to, on behalf of Mayor Lee, who couldn't be here today, I know that he would have loved to have joined you all today, to really thank Comcast in rolling out your second pilot in the United States here in San Francisco. But also, I know that sitting here at this table, many of our nonprofit leaders and community leaders, as well as Anne, I know she's on her phone right now, Department of Aging and Adult Services, and Self-Help for the Elderly, because they've really been trying to pave the way and set the foundation for us to do this work, to allow companies such as Comcast to be able to come in and better serve our senior community and the populations that do not have access to internet. And so I know how important this is, having grown up in a family and a household where my parents immigrated here to America, and only in the past, couple years did they fully embrace the internet. In fact, yesterday I went to my parents' house, and my dad was showing me a game that he downloaded, and I was playing this game. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe my dad is on this iPad, showing me all the different things that he has learned to do from the internet, and just the wealth of information and the services that are available to our seniors from the internet, and how important that is that all of us learn how to do that. And so, again, I want to thank Comcast for your partnership, as well as everyone else who has really been working very hard to secure funding in our budget to make sure that we can close the digital divide. So 大家好，我是汤凯蒂，弱区市议员。 今天我是代替市长市长很抱歉，他今天不能来参加你们的活动。可是我们非常感谢 Comcast， 还有安老，还有 Department of Aging Adult Services， 希望大家能够用这个机会去多学怎么用电脑上网路，因为我们现在你也晓得，我们现在很多资料都是在网络上。我的父母也是前几年也是学的怎么去上网路用 email 跟他们，连我爸爸还最近跟他的小学同学从台湾send email， 所以希望大家可以用这个机会去跟 Comcast 还有安老多学，还有从你的小孩子学怎么用电脑。所以again 非常感谢，还有抱歉市长不能来参加今天，可是我今天来代替他就是鼓励大家来参加这个 program。好，谢谢大家 ，Thank you。
Thank you, Acting Mayor and Supervisor Tang, for being with us today to mark really this special occasion. Now I'm delighted to introduce this district's own Board of Supervisor who advocates for residents of this city, especially on behalf of providing digital literacy to most of those in need, like seniors. It's my pleasure to introduce Supervisor Julie Christensen.
Hi, Julie. Thank you. There you go. Mason, I'm going to put you to work here if you can come up. Chosan, good morning. Chosan, good morning. So I'm always happy to be at Lady Shaw and see all my friends here. Chosan, good morning. Thank you, Annie, for hosting us here today. I'm very happy to see our former district supervisor and now assemblyman from Sacramento, David Chu, here. Good morning, David. It was when David was supervisor that I first became familiar with some of the programs to open up technology to the seniors. So I'm glad to have him here. And of course, welcome to our acting mayor and to my colleague Scott Wiener. Mason, you want to do a quick?
首先多謝呢度代表呢個華埠市參事嘅 K 志恩啦，亦都係多謝各位今日係俾我哋能夠有機會同大家見面啦。咁亦都係多謝鐘女士啦，同埋亦都好榮幸見到前任嘅第3區市參事邱信福，而家係成為咗眾議員啦，亦都係多謝湯海蒂代任市長喺度啦。
And a special thanks this morning to Comcast for making these programs available and this service available to our seniors. City Hall, government can't do it all, and we rely on help from our business leaders, and so I'm very, very grateful to Comcast. The last time that I did an announcement like this with them, we were standing in a schoolyard with young children. I'm happy now to be here at Lady Shaw with the seniors. I think people know I love everyone in District 3, but I have a special spot for our families and children and for our seniors. So I'm grateful to Comcast for making these services available to those members of our community.
亦都感謝 Comcast 啦。上一次同 Comcast 開記者招待會就係喺呢個華埠其中一間小學，同好多小朋友見面啦。咁亦都係今日好榮幸可以見到咁多 Comcast 係可以能夠將佢哋計劃係拓展到去為耆英服務嘅。
So thanks to the Community Technology Network and to the Community Living Campaign and to Self-Help. Thank you to Ann and our folks at at Aging and Adult Services. It takes a lot of people to take a good program like this and actually make it available to the community. So we know we rely on our nonprofits for help, and we're very grateful for them in this case.
亦都感謝呢個在座咁多位唔同嘅一啲唔同嘅志願團體啦，同埋一啲社區團體啦，亦都係再一次感謝安老自助處啦，同埋 Ann Hinton 係老人服務處嘅負責人啦。
I know when we built the new North Beach Library and we were asking people what did we want in a new library, one of the main things they said, besides lots of books, was more computers. And so we went from 3 computers to 15 computers in the new North Beach Library, and every time I go in, I see that there's somebody sitting at every single one. So I'm anxious for all the seniors to get more familiar with the computers and to be able to take advantage of this tool to communicate and to explore.
咁市參事暨志恩亦都記得當年係 重建北岸圖書館嘅時候啦，咁除咗問咗好多市民，除咗係書本之外，仲有啲咩需要？咁當時有好多市民都係希望可以多啲電腦嘅，咁亦都見到當時電腦由3部增加到而家15部啦。咁每一次去到北岸圖書館，見到唔同嘅市民都可以利用到圖書館入邊電腦嘅資源啦，亦都感到開心嘅。咁亦都係希望可以將來見到更多係耆英啦，同埋長老可以長者可以繼續係能夠去得到呢個上網嘅資源嘅。
So I know we have our smoke detectors installed at Lady Shaw, and I see the city has made lines out on the street. We're going to have our new crosswalk soon to make it safer, and now we're going to have better internet. So I think it's a good time for Lady Shaw. Thank you to Comcast.
咁亦都係恭喜邵逸夫爵士夫人嘅中心啦。咁市府亦都係為呢度中心安裝咗好多嘅煙霧探測器啦。而家大家見到出邊嘅亦都係呢個街角咧，亦都係準備係為行人道係進行啲改善嘅工作啦。再加埋而家 Comcast 將會係將呢個上網服務帶俾耆英啦。咁亦都係對貴中心係一個有好多嘅好處嘅。多謝各位。
Thank you very much, Supervisor Christensen. Now, our next guest doesn't need an introduction. He represented District 3, serving SF Board President for 6 years. As the first Asian American Board President and the son of immigrant parents, he understands the importance of empowering all communities with the resources they need to succeed. It is my sincere pleasure to introduce California State Assembly and Assistant Speaker Pro Tem for the Assembly, David Chu. Good to see you. Always.
早晨，大家好。Good morning. It's great to be back. I am usually in Sacramento in the middle of the week, but fortunately today I didn't have committee, and this was such an important announcement that I was delighted to come and join all of you. We are a center of technology and innovation. San Francisco has been leading 21st century economies as far as what we're doing. But we know that we still have a very real digital divide. And we know that if you're a senior, you're less likely to be on the internet. If you're low income, you're less likely to be on the internet. If you're an immigrant, if you're a Chinese immigrant or Latino immigrant, you're less likely to be an immigrant, to be online. And it is obvious that if you are a Chinese senior who is of fixed income, you're less likely to be on the internet. And I want to thank Comcast for recognizing that and being part of this very important announcement. Like Acting Mayor Katie Tang, I've been trying for years to get my parents to get online, and like Supervisor Tang, just the past 24 hours, I found out that my father sent a Facebook request to my district director, and my mother texted me for the second time in her life to tell me that she had just received one of those consumer scam emails. And to me, that's a really, really big step. This announcement, what Comcast, in partnership with the city, in partnership with Lady Shaw is doing, is going to change how our seniors are able to enjoy their lives, to be able to get more healthcare information, to be able to connect with your children and your grandchildren, to be able to find a cheaper flight to visit your friends around the state of California and to visit your friends in China and Hong Kong and Taiwan. These are just some of the benefits of being able to get online. And I'm just delighted to be able to work with great partners. It's good to be here with my former colleagues and my successor, Katie Tang and Julie Christensen and Scott Wiener. Like all of us, we are 1,000% dedicated to making sure we have 100% of our San Franciscans who get online. So let me close with one last thing. I'm going to give all of you my email address because once you're online, I expect to hear from you. I want to know what's going on. I want to hear about how the Giants are going to win their next World Series. And I also want to be connected with each and every one of you here in Chinatown, here at Lady Shaw. It's david.chu@assembly.ca.gov. And with that, again, thank you, Comcast. We look forward to working with you toward that 100% goal.
All right, it's time to fill up his email box. It'll just be a matter of time for that. It's great to know that this this project is going to take place right here in the Bay Area, the site of so much innovation. So thanks again, once again, to Comcast. It's great to see a program like this. Now I know someone who is extremely excited to be part of this expansion program of Internet Essentials. She has been the champion of low-income seniors, family, youth, you name it, in the Bay Area for many, many years. Since 1981, in fact, Annie has overseen and managed Self-Help for the Elderly, a vital community-based organization providing comprehensive range of services for over 35,000 seniors in the Bay Area. And that includes so many different things: health, education, social, recreation programs as well, and even serving meals to over 1,500 Bay Area seniors. It is my true pleasure. What an honor to be with her today. Annie Chung, she's the president and CEO of Self-Help for the Elderly. Thank you, Annie. So nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Laura. And welcome everybody to the Lady Shaw and the Self-Help for the Elderly Senior Center. Right at this very place in June, Scott Adams attended our Digital Connectors graduation. This is that youth program that Self-Help have ran for the past 9 years. And every year we train between 12 to 15 youth between 14 to 21 and teach them computer skills, internet skills, but more important, community services and leadership skills. And Scott was whispering in my ear that say, Annie, your dream of expanding the Internet Essentials program to seniors may come true. But I can't say too much about it. But wait for my good news. Okay, I'm sorry, David. Yeah. But really, within 2 short months, here comes Lorena calling us to prepare for this wonderful, wonderful announcement. And she's been working day and night to make this happen along with Josephine, our staff. I want to give thanks to the two of you, Lorena and Scott, for being our partner for the past 10 years. So the Digital Connectors program was not only wonderful to the children, but every graduation, the parents of these kids will walk up to Scott and me and thank us for having that program. They say that their daughter, from a young 15-year-old who doesn't touch the computer much because they're very recent immigrants, but now with the skills and the Digital Connector program, they just blossomed and matured. And I think Scott and I were amazed at those videos that they made for the class graduation. And when Scott presented the computer, the laptop, and all of the wonderful gifts to the kids, it almost seemed to send them off with just such a wonderful career booster. So on behalf of the Digital Connectors and on behalf of our community, thank you to Comcast. Thank you to Scott and Lorena. So I was taught many, many years ago by a wise board member that if you have a dream and you want your dream to come true, share it with as many people as you can. So while Lorena recruited Self-Help to teach the Internet Essential classes to the families with school children, with school lunch program children. So we were very happy to do that. But every time I have a chance, I say, Lorena, what about the seniors? I think I'm going to thank Anne, and Denise, and Aaron, and Paolo, who really listen to the community. So Marie Jobling, Cami Grivens, and I have been talking about how do we get the last 20, 30,000 low-income seniors connected to this great internet and get information on health, go to DMV for appointment, look at all the consumer kind of a report, but more important to connect with their family and their friends. That makes such a difference, to the quality of their life. I think, David, everything begins in San Francisco. So you chose the right city to have your pilot. I'm almost certain that with anything that DAS and the community agencies partner with Comcast, it will not only meet your expectation, but it would exceed it. And I just hope that you would not put a cap in that number, whatever number you have. so that if we, no cap, so if we bring you 40,000 seniors to this Internet Essential Program, you welcome them with open arms. So thank you, David, for a wonderful staff. And thank you to all of our seniors. They have been supporting the SF Connected classes. We started our Thai Center about 15 years ago. I remember Norm Mineta came as Secretary of Commerce, and he kind of felt firsthand the challenges of a non-English or limited English immigrant senior learning the computer and the internet. But Gordon and Anna Lee, our student from 15 years ago, now had advanced to learn almost anything, that is relevant to making his life. And now he's coming back to teach the SF Connected class as a volunteer. And he lives in the East Bay. So I want to thank Gordon and Anna for truly, we said that just teach the senior. They are the best students, they care. They really learn and listen. And David, we have patience. So we know that we waited for a long time, but finally our dreams are coming true. So thanks again for this Internet Essential Program. This $9.99 is like a gift. And I know that our senior population will really embrace it. So thanks again. Thanks, Laura. 我要講幾句中文嚇，最緊要咧就講俾大家聽話，今日 Comcast 咧就話俾我哋聽，有9.99一個月嘅月費咧，就可以俾你哋喺屋企可以上到網。咁呢一個咧係好特別嘅計劃。咁我哋非常多謝 Comcast 呢個電訊公司，佢除咗每一年咧俾好多錢安老自在處做呢個電訊嘅服務啦，同埋嗰個青年嗰個上網嗰個計劃咧，佢仲係俾我哋好多經費咧嚟到教啲老人家點樣去學識呢個電腦嘅常識嘅。咁今次有咗呢個 Internet Essential， 即係呢個平價呢一個服務咧，我希望我哋華人亞裔人就係老人嘅耆英咧，都可以上網嚇。上網你哋已經知道係幫助到你哋好多嘅。咁我哋希望你哋繼續嚟學習呢個電腦嘅常識，繼續支持 Comcast。多謝。Oh, okay. So my job here is to ask one of our consumers to speak directly to you, and she is Miss Tracy Lee. Tracy Lee, sorry. So Tracy is gonna speak in English. And she's from Vietnam, immigrant from Vietnam, and she's been coming to learn about all of the internet and computer classes from Self-Help for the Elderly. So Tracy.
Good morning, everybody. 早晨，各位好。I have been attending computer classes at this center for more than 2 years, and I have learned how to get on the internet for. To email to connect with my friend and family, and I learned how to get on the internet to watch a movie, to listen to music, and search crochet pattern for my crochet and knitting. And I can almost do anything that I want to do on the internet. And I would like to have the internet service at home so that I can get on the internet at my convenient time. But right now, I am not connected with internet at home. And I'm very thankful if Comcast can offer the low-cost internet service to senior, not only to senior, but to the disabled like me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your story as well. Now, the only thing I warn you, don't start shopping on the internet, because that could get you in trouble. Then we're going to give Mr. Cohen a big bill, right? Now, and Annie, you keep giving us those dreams, too, because look at that. They keep coming true. So that's wonderful to see. And it's so exciting to be a part of this big announcement, the Internet Essentials program to seniors and the pilot program taking place right here in our very beloved San Francisco, connecting low-income seniors to the power of the internet in your homes, whatever we can do to get everyone online and working. It's really important and vital to keeping us all connected, and we thank Comcast as well for playing such a major role in this. Thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure being here.
And I know when John was president of the Senate, he did not like naming any type of highway, road, bridge after anyone who was alive. So after he termed out, I'm glad he termed out, Bob Toomey, it was Bob Toomey, my chief of staff at the time, said, hey, we need to really name the freeway in front of John's house after John. And I said, great. And it caused a whole lot of commotion because the Senate didn't want to do it because of their standing rule. But then they decided to suspend the rules to allow us to name this freeway after the great Senator John Burton. So we are here today. He has been my mentor and my boss. And for me, he has really been the current modern day St. Francis de Assisi. The wonderful John Burton. I'm so happy we are all here today. So without further ado, we have fabulous speaker, Nancy Pelosi, our Nancy. The two of them are like partners in crime. Nothing happens at the state or the federal level when it comes to San Francisco, the Bay Area, or California without our Nancy and John. So Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Fiona, and thank you for bringing us all together. It was interesting to hear your history because it was one that was probably shared by many people here as John oriented them to his greatness in terms of values and what, as John would say, getting the J-O-B done, getting the job done. When Fiona sent out the word, when anyone sends out the word puts out the word that John is going to be honored, when that word is put out, the crowd turns out for John Burton. So many of us were together in Sacramento when the California State Party building, unbeknownst to John, as a complete and total surprise to him, was named for him. And here we are today. That was a political home for him. Here we are today, right close to where he grew up. He used to say to us during campaigns, the campaign hasn't begun until the sign is up on Millie's house. So when the sign's up, the campaign begins. Christine always reminds me of that. Anytime there's a campaign, you know what John would say. I hope it is a source of great pride to his grandchildren that so many people hold John in such high esteem. He is brilliant, we know that. He is tactical and strategic both. We know that. He is, from time to time, humorous, intentional or not. He is always right on point. Wittingly or unwittingly, he drives it right home. I just want to say that a few weeks ago, there was a reunion of the Watergate babies in Washington, D.C. 40 years ago, they were sworn into Congress as this whole new generation of leaders. They came in, swept the chairmanship of shall we say, people who did not agree with their generation or their orientation or their view on the war and Vietnam. And the big star of the show, of course, was John Burton. Everyone was thrilled that he turned out. Everyone had a John Burton story. And the reason we all do is because John Burton is about truth. So here's former Speaker Hirschberg here who served with John. I know that Fiona said it was a challenge to get a naming done, but it was interesting that it was unanimous, that 38-0 in the state Senate. No surprise there. But this is a very special person. His values run deep. His knowledge is so broad. His judgments are spontaneous. And when you say, Mr. Mayor, that sometimes he wonders why we hadn't come to that conclusion ourselves, why do you ask? And he quotes sometimes Phil when he says, you'll understand when you understand. That sounds like him. So it's a joy to be here with the mayor, with Fiona, with our all of the elected officials who are here. I'm particularly proud to be here with Jackie Spear because we are one block into her district. And so we all want to claim some part of John Burton. It's remarkable that a highway is named for him. I thought we were coming out for a street naming, but this is a highway. And that's a highway important because John always took the high road. A highway is important because he always showed us the path forward. A highway, a street, a road, he always showed us the path forward with great clarity. So it's actually a very personal privilege for me. It's a family affair. My daughter Christine is here. Paul is coming. Paul Jr. is coming. They may already be here. I haven't seen them. But they all send their love, as does this act of love for John Burton speak for the people of not only this district, not only our city, not only the state of California, but for his many friends on the national level. And what a busy intersection it is. And so many people will come by here and say, aha, John Burton, I knew him, I knew of him, and for generations to come, it will be a name that instantaneously brings to people's mind greatness, brilliance, and getting the job done. Congratulations, John Burton. Where is it?
Thank you. And the sign is right over across the street with the bow, and there will be another sign all the way down on 39th Avenue right before the zoo. So everyone who's going to the zoo will also be reminded how great John Burton is. Our next speaker is Congresswoman Jackie Spear. We are in her district. She was on the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors and also served in the Assembly and in the Senate with John Burton. So, Jackie Spear.
Thank you, Fiona, and thank you for your vision and that of your staff to recognize the importance of leaving an indelible mark on our great city that reflects John Burton. So, as you see, from 19th to 39th is the new John Burton Highway. This is a leafy, green, spiritual place known as Stern Grove. It ends, as Fiona said, at the zoo. And if you think about John's life, it's apropos. He had a lot of leafy stuff in his past, smoked a lot of it, and having witnessed his leadership in both the Assembly and the Senate, I can tell you from time to time it was a zoo. I see his good friend Mike Roos is here, and Craig Lucas, and the former Speaker, and even the other side of the aisle, Mr. Duplessis, Kevin Shelley. I mean, this is really the family of San Francisco who is here today to celebrate a true legend. As our leader just said, he is a legend, and God love him, he's a legend in our time, and we have the great opportunity to recognize him today. I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about what he did in Sacramento. He was a bulldozer. He absolutely could move anything through the process. And one of the examples that really sticks in my mind is when the pedophilia took front stage in so many communities around the country. His passion about giving those victims an opportunity to have their day in court was felt by everyone. And he did really the impossible by creating, out of whole cloth, a new statute of limitation that would extend for a period of, I think, a year or 2 years. I mean, if it had been challenged in the courts, it probably would have been held unconstitutional. But John did it, and people who had been victimized got relief. So whether it was trying to make sure that we got a particular benefit from the high-speed rail monies, or whether it was making sure that the poor were not forgotten, John Burton was always the conscience of the state Senate. And we had great times together. We had some tough times together during the energy crisis. And when we had governor leadership that wasn't quite as, shall we say, amenable to John's way of doing business, we were challenged from time to time. But John, this is indeed fitting. You are a hero, I think, to all of us who recognize that you've got to do the right thing, even when it's the wrong time. So your leadership will be remembered now through this freeway, but particularly because we're at this leafy location and we've got the zoo at the other end. Congratulations.
So I wouldn't be here without John Burton, and I know another woman has also benefited from the mentorship and love of John Burton, our state controller, Betty Yee.
Thank you, Fiona. Good morning, everyone. I can't tell you how special it is to be back in the old neighborhood. And I'm really thrilled that there are so many native San Franciscans right from this area joining us to honor our great Senator John Burton. So I just wanted to say a couple things because this is such a fitting tribute, and especially having grown up in the same neighborhood. And most of you know my personal story where my family had their laundry and dry cleaning business right on Terraville between 24th and 25th Avenue. And it was a time when just the whole value of community was so treasured, and the fact that they were able to just put 6 kids through college is like amazing to me. But a lot of that just has to do with the values of the time, and I just really attribute that to the leadership of John Burton, his brother Phil, and that this is about community, and that if anybody was hurting in a community, it meant that it was sustained on the entire community. And I hope that as we cherish this moment of honoring John, as we drive along this highway and see the signs in the future, that we'll just reflect that as much as we are seeing this great city evolve in its great diversity, and I know the mayor is providing great leadership in the city as well, but that we all just reflect and just think about not forgetting the less fortunate among us. And that's what John's always been about. That's what his leadership has been marked by. It's what we frankly miss in Sacramento today. But I know that as we go forward from this day today, I hope that we can each recommit ourselves to the value of community and what that means within each of our communities as we define it. So to John, thank you very much for just, one, accepting this honor, and two, for letting us just celebrate you and what you've meant to so many of us, not just in your elected family, but to this great city of San Francisco. Congratulations, John.
So as anyone knows, Highway 1, Highway 35, they're all state highways, and trying to deal with the state and the highways is not always easy. I have had my battles with them, as Bill probably knows. But we are fortunate that we have a former John Burton staffer, someone who worked for John Burton in the Senate, who now is the Secretary of Transportation, Brian Kelly, who really helped make this happen here today. Brian.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I should say thank you or apologize. But no, I'm very honored to be here today, and I should say before I took the appointment from Governor Brown in March of 2012 to work in the executive branch, I spent a great 17 years working in the state Senate in Sacramento, and 6 of those years were working for John when he was the pro tem of the state Senate. And most people think that when you become a veteran legislative staffer over time, you're supposed to get very cynical and hard and bitter about politics, and I always found it to be quite the opposite. I found that the more I stuck around, the more good you wanted to do, and the one thing that all legislative staffers want is they want to work for somebody who they're so proud of and who they respect so much. And I can tell you, John, that without an exception, every person that I worked with when we worked for you, we're proud to work for you then, proud to work for you now, and we'll always be proud to say that we work for John Burton. So I just want to say, John, congratulations. This is so well deserved.
And we're also happy that his daughter, Kimiko Burton, and his John Burton's grandkids are here today. They just literally got off a plane yesterday, so they're probably a little bit jet lagged, but we wanted to make sure that they were here for this presentation. So Kimiko.
This is just what my dad loves, kind of like an open mic. So we're going to let everybody hear. So I haven't worked for him, but I'm here as the family representative, and as we were driving down here this morning, I was shocked that we could see the ocean. So, I mean, it really is a remarkable day. I've made the drive down Slope Boulevard more times than I can count, and maybe 6 times have I been able to see the ocean as we come down. And as Nancy said, the whole time I was growing up, there were Burton signs in my grandmother's window. And after a certain point, it didn't even need to be campaign season. She had them up 365 days a year because that's who she was. And so my dad doesn't care to have things named after him. We don't get elected to go to X. We get elected to do stuff. But I am proud of everything that he has done, and I am so glad that my kids are here and that they will have the legacy of everything that my dad has done. And it's so nice to see all of these people here. And I got to tell you, my dad is a Sunset guy, but I am an East Side girl, and it is cold out here. And every day when I left my house to go to school, I went to Lowell. I would leave my house in a T-shirt and a pair of shorts, and I'd come home and be cold, and they'd say, "It's cold out there. How do you not know that?" And today, I'm cold. How do I not know that? Anyway, thank you all for being here. The John Burton Highway is a great thing and a tremendous honor, not just for my dad, but for myself and for my children. Thanks for coming.
And the other gentleman who made this day happen. Without him, we wouldn't be able to be here, standing here. Brian Kelly runs the state highways, and Mayor Ed Lee runs everything else in the city. Our great mayor, Mayor Ed Lee.
Thank you, Fiona. Well, actually, it's Mohammed Nuru and Ed Riskin. They do a lot of the work as well. Well, listen, it is just my personal pleasure to join all of you, Leader Pelosi, Jackie, Betty, Fiona, of course, Brian, the Burton family, and all of your friends here to have this special occasion of people who have not only their lives have been touched, but also can testify that John is a personality never to be forgotten, but also one that I think all of us celebrate for so many reasons. I see present members of our Board of Supervisors that are here, thank you. Our fire chief and department heads that have been touched with his good work. I also see past members of our Board of Supervisors and community leaders who for years have had the privilege of his leadership, but also his counsel. And I, for one, I wanted to say most strongly that I don't think I would have ever gotten here without that special counseling, John, that occasionally you quietly disperse to those you love the most. I have to remember that. But, beyond the, the very colorful language that is often associated with his speeches, I do believe that I've sought out for many years the counsel of people who've had the experience of touching a lot of other people's hearts and minds, and made sure that those of us in public office never abuse that privilege, that very, very special privilege of representing the people who don't have representation. This is what Johnny Burton and the entire Burton family, for all I know, represent, is that touch, that touch that is very special to San Francisco, and is one that I seek out because, kind of like this intersection, there are many
All right, we're back in open session, and I will turn to subsection E of item number 6 for discussion and vote pursuant to the Brown Act and the Sunshine Ordinance on whether to disclose any action taken or discussion held in closed session regarding the anticipated litigation.
Move we do not disclose.
Second.
Any discussion? Any public comment?
David Pilpel, speaking as an individual. It's not really so much public comment. I'm just wondering if there was any announcement of action taken in closed session. I'm not interested in disclosure of discussion.
Pardon me, I'm not sure I understood what you said.
I support the motion not to disclose any discussion. I'm just wondering if there was any action taken that you need to report out.
No.
No action to report out. Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll turn to item number 7, discussion and possible action on the Commission's June 29th and July 27th draft minutes. Any corrections or additions by the Commission? Any corrections or additions by the public?
David Pilpel again, speaking as an individual. Since we had a lot of time and while you were in closed session, I went through both sets of minutes, and there were a number of typos and things that I think could read better. I won't go through them. I'm happy to give them to staff, and if you would perhaps give them a little discretion to make some minor improvements to them, non-substantive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the minutes as possibly revised with minor corrections.
I move that we approve the minutes subject to typographical and other drafting errors by the staff.
Second?
Second.
All right. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes will be approved as amended. Item number 8 is a discussion of the acting executive director's report.
Yes, Commissioners, I would just call your attention to 2 items. One is on page 2, which talks about under campaign finance disclosure program, our new CFRO rules went into effect, as I mentioned before. And so we've been doing a lot of outreach. We did we issued 2 new forms, 2 fact sheets summarizing all the changes, and then we had 5 charts that were based on the FPBC's charts about the disclaimer requirements that we hope, we've gotten some good feedback so far, but hopefully it will help people comply with these new rules. And then the final thing I point out is on the second to last page about the statement outreach and education. We just met the other day with union members in connection with the electronic filing of Form 700 issue. And so there continue to be concerns that the unions have regarding both the people who are required to file in the first place and then folks who are, and then just getting it up, posted electronically. So we did the meet and discuss per the advice of the city and DHR. We're at the point right now where it is not possible to implement this by the April 1st deadline, given a number of things that have to happen. So we are going to have to shoot for the following year, and we have we've had discussions with the unions in terms of them culling through the lists to make them more appropriate, so that, for instance, receptionists don't have to file Form 700s. Evidently, in one case, they did. But also talking to them during that process about, about the actual electronic posting itself. And, they have some suggestions. I'm not sure how possible they are, but we'll maintain that sort of avenue open as well. And otherwise, it's just submitted.
Any questions or discussions?
Mr. Chair, yes. Mr. Minority, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the budget.
Sure.
Since we just the city approved a 2-year budget, and in relation to that, I wanted to talk about this commission secretary that came up earlier in the meeting. which is mandatory but only in relation to budget considerations of the city. So, we're under budget and staffing, we were talking about some reductions that we had. There was a 3% reduction in fringe benefits costs and a reduction in services from other departments. I just wanted to hear a little bit more of why and how those reductions happen.
The honest truth is that with respect to those sort of smaller percentage reductions, I don't know the specifics. I can certainly get back to you. The big reduction, the 22% reduction, is really a reflection of the fact that we got this one-time funding last year that's not there. My understanding is that the staff funding increase is a COLA increase for ongoing staff, but that they anticipate, next year basically adding another position. That would be an enforcement position. So, it's like anything else. I mean, obviously it'd be great to have a commission secretary that's, who could prepare all these wonderful materials for you. Certainly, it's like anything else in terms of priorities and that sort of thing. You have to make that determination. But
what kind of, I guess for sake of a better word, politicking is done over the years to try and get the mayor to be more sympathetic to our needs? I mean, do you know? I mean, was Jack meeting with the mayor and his staff over the time and trying to convince them that we do have needs if we're going to be an effective body? Or is it just something that we hand in what we want and the mayor does what he wants?
So my experience is that most of the communications are done through our budget analyst with the mayor, right? That in the year that I've been here, a year and a half, and that the extra asks are generally, and that the position from the mayor's office has been. Well, I think to answer your question, I don't think that Jack was going to the mayor directly. There was some back and forth with the mayor's office on the budget in terms of pushing. There was a lot of pushback. And then ultimately there were some appeals made to particular members of the Board of Supervisors. In the year and a half that I've been here, that's what I've seen.
I would just have to say that I would look for the new executive director to be more of an advocate around some of these open positions for just that reason. If we're going to, this is a very administratively and heavy commission. And lots of we just looking at that timeline and the projects that we have on board, and if someone's time is being taken up with pulling reports and minutes together, that a secretary, in which we would just be more in line with most every other commission, I can't imagine that I wouldn't put that as a part of my recommendation for 16-17. I would somehow find a way of getting that in there. Enforcement is obviously important, and investigators are important, and auditors are important. But in the last up to 2 years that I've played in this particular arena, I can see the benefit of having a secretary. So.
I agree totally with what Commissioner Andrews has said, and the feelings that I've gotten in regard to the lobbying for the budget for the commission by Mr. St. Croix in my grilling of him several times was that he did very little, if anything. And I speak as someone who, for 20 years, was chief assistant of a city department and was the person who was in charge of getting the budget and dealing with the mayor's office and dealing with the Board of Supervisors. And it's, for any agency, you have to, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. You've got to go constantly knock on them. And I think that the new executive director has to make that a priority and enlist this commission in helping them. I'd be perfectly happy in regard to the budgetary processes. As a commissioner, if my colleagues would see fit, to work with the executive director, to meet with the budget analysts, to meet with the mayor's office people, because I know the dance. I've done it for many years, and I think to do that in regard to getting things like a secretary, we need a secretary. I don't think the next executive director, whoever it is, should be sitting up here in the middle of us. Because for one thing, it makes that person a target for the public. Oh, he's running the place. That whoever the executive director is should be sitting down there with the staff. And a secretary at the end of this table, as we had, as I recall when I was on the police commission, carries out all sorts of good functions, briefing us as a commission, yet at the same time isn't subject to the kind of pressures that the executive director is in terms of, well, if I say this, will they think I'm not doing my job right? Or should I keep this under the table? Those are just the realities of the dynamics between us as a commission and our executive director, which we wouldn't have those dynamics if we had a secretary, as Commissioner Andrews has said. That's why it would be so valuable.
Secretary's responsibility is to report the information.
Exactly.
The decision maker.
Yeah.
The decision maker will always have that role and responsibility from a seat down there, but the same person who has the role and responsibility won't be the same person who's reporting out on proceedings and activities. And I think that would be a great separation of responsibilities and segregation.
I agree.
I mean, I think it all depends on what money we can get and what our priorities are. But, I mean, to me, enforcement is, like you guys are saying, enforcement is a big one, and we got to figure out how best to spend it. But certainly more help would be great.
Well, that's part of the budget lobbying and as well. For those things, enforcement first, but these other things as well. But you've got to go ahead and lobby for your agency. Someone's got to be in there banging on the mayor and it used to be Harvey Rose. Now I hear Harvey Rose, as of a year ago, is no longer the budget analyst. Boy, that's a change of significance over a couple of generations. I think it's a big loss to the city, mainly because I thought I knew how to push his buttons, but in any event, it's got to be, the job has got to be done, and I don't think it's been done.
I take it from the city attorney's point of view, there's nothing inconsistent with the commissioners personally lobbying whoever is doling out the funds?
The commission, when the time comes, needs to be careful about interference with the day-to-day affairs of the commission staff. That line, which is often hard to walk, but working with whoever that executive director is and the commission, I'm sure we could figure out ways that the commissioners can be helpful to achieving the goal. But it'll be a line.
Thanks. All right. Turning to agenda item 9, items for future meetings.
Sorry.
Public comment?
Yes. Since you had a bit of discussion on the budget, David Pilpel again, speaking as an individual. I think these questions about priorities and resources should be addressed with the new executive director and as part of the budget process for next year. I think there are, you had some of the discussion now, but I think there's really a broader discussion and a good and fair debate about workload and priorities, auditors, enforcement, commission secretary. One thing that you might want to consider in relation to the commission secretary that the Port Commission, I think, does successfully, they don't meet that frequently, and their commission secretary serves part-time in that function and part-time as the secretary to the port director. So you wouldn't necessarily need a full-time person just to serve as commission secretary. That person could perform other tasks in the office. And there could be some restructuring of staff and staff responsibilities, all of which you should probably discuss with the new executive director. And then in terms of how resources happen in the budget process, certainly the commission can be involved with the director and I wouldn't call it lobbying, they might have to register, but in trying to seek additional resources. I think as changes to the laws have happened, whenever something is proposed, you should try to get in there seeking an appropriation for resources to meet the additional need, if you, et cetera. And I think the expenditure lobbyist measure does that, and so that's kind of a model. And really the additional functions that we might want for the commission, be it auditing, enforcement, secretarial, or other, are really not that expensive in the grand scheme of the city budget. We could probably better resource the commission for, $100, $200, $250,000. It's not like millions for street repaving or something else. So there may be other ways, and I agree that the new executive director should be a strong advocate for resources to meet your mandate. Thank you.
I hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any public discussion?
Future items.
For me?
Public discussion on future items.
Is there public discussion on future items? Public discussion on adjournment? We'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Hearing none, we're adjourned.